February 6th to order. Good evening, Council, once again, as we continue our budget presentations, and we're going to start off with transit tonight. Hi, Barb.
Hello. Good evening. I'm pleased to be presenting the SCI Ride budget. This budget was adopted by our board in December. The budget supports SCI Ride's goal of connecting people to the community with safe and efficient transportation that exceeds customers' expectations. It also supports the goal of reducing carbon emissions and providing a sustainable community to live. If I was asked to give you one word to describe SCI Ride right now, I would say the word is adjustment. It's a period of adapting and becoming used to a new situation, So as the new transit director, employees have had to adjust. They've had to adjust to a new leader, adjust to new roles within the organization. They've had to adjust to new ridership levels and adjust to new expectations. But I'm excited because with adjustment also brings opportunities. Opportunities for discussion, opportunities for introspection, and then opportunities to make a difference. This is a summary of our ridership history. So the blue is the historical data there, and the red is our projected ridership kind of range. 93% of our riders are ISU students, and each Iowa State student generates about 164 rides on SCI Ride a year. SCI Rides and ridership has always mirrored what is happening at Iowa State. So as enrollment has gone up, so has our ridership. As enrollment has started to decline, so has our ridership, as the chart shows there. Enrollment is expected to gradually trend downward, so likely will our ridership. But from my perspective, SCI Ride is always adapting to changing demands within our community. So in the fall, when new students come to Ames, we have to adapt. In the winter, when ridership patterns change because of cold weather. During the summer, when students leave to go home. So SCI Ride leadership is used to making decisions in a constantly changing ridership environment. And I see this as really an opportunity to evaluate our policies, our processes, and our procedures. It's an opportunity to meet more of the community riders' needs. We know how to adjust, and adjustment is kind of a natural process, and we're not the only transit agency that's having to adjust to changing ridership demographics and demands, but our ability to adapt and change is what has made us an industry and an industry leader in a benchmark organization. So I wanted to share something with you. So every year, the American Public Transit Association publishes what's called a fact book, and it rates all the transit systems in the US. And SCI Ride is rated third in the nation in rides per capita. So I thought that'd be your good fun fact, Gloria.
Thank you.
New York, San Francisco, and Ames, Iowa. And I think it's something that everybody in this room should be proud of. This is really a statement about our commitment and our ability to work together and adapt to change. By seeking new opportunities, pushing for innovation, and transforming our services and working together, we can continue to lead the industry and set the standard of excellence for transit systems. We have been thorough and thoughtful in our approach to the budget, and we've worked hard to control expenditures without reducing services. Our budget supports a 1.1% decrease from last year's budget request, with a modest increase from the 3 local funding partners of 2.2%. For the city of Ames, that increase equates to about $46,000, and the property tax rate, transit levy, sorry for that, is 0.636. And Dwayne can say it the right way, 1,000 valuation.
Per 1,000.
Thank you. I'm not used to talking with that, so. But it's important that we continue to have a fiscally responsible transit system. So SCI Ride administration and the transit board will be working on right-sizing the system to accommodate current and future obligations. I've also been working to develop new relationships with other community partners, like a partner like Ames Community School District and partners like DMAC, looking at access to opportunity for their students so that working together we can ensure transportation isn't a barrier to their education. I'm also on the legislative committee chair for the Iowa Public Transit Association, working at the legislative level to help advocate for SCI Ride and the state of Iowa to increase state and federal funding dollars for SCI Ride. As you remember from our CIP presentation, we put a few capital projects on hold, but we will continue to invest in our fleet and facilities to align with SCI Ride's core priority of keeping our capital equipment and facilities in a state of good repair, which is an FTA requirement. This year, we've been extremely fortunate to receive several grants, so we are replacing 6 large buses. 2 of those will be battery electric buses, 6 minibuses, and 2 support vehicles, supporting the goal of reducing carbon emissions and providing a sustainable community. We will also be upgrading our HVAC equipment in our facility to improve air quality throughout the building. As we adjust and focus on right sizing, addressing the facility is still going to be important as we move forward. We still have vehicles parked outside, and we need to address a requirement for a dedicated training course in the future. Possible changes to the layout of Iowa State Center could alter operations on the number 23 Orange Route, which, fun fact, by passenger count, the number 23 Orange Route is the 3rd largest transit system in the state of Iowa. So incorporating alternative fuels also into our fleet may require facility and infrastructure modifications as well. So a thorough, thoughtful approach by the Transit Board will be required while we make decisions regarding the facility in the coming years. We're also looking to technology to make our systems as efficient and responsive as possible to changing ridership patterns. Technology will provide us better data. It'll help us become more agile and quicker to match service needs to that of the community. I mentioned the automatic vehicle locating in the CIP, but what I didn't mention is we have launched our own app for this. It's called My Ride. The app has been downloaded 6,000 times since September when we launched it, and it has about 720 daily users on that platform. We also will continue to support Iowa State's My State app, which gets between 7,000 and 9,000 daily users. And the majority of those users are using the SCI Ride app. We have the ABA, which I mentioned in the Capitol as well, and that's the voice enunciating inside and outside of the buses. But what I didn't mention is it was a request by the Office of Student Accessibility Services from Iowa State. This ensures equity and expands access to individuals throughout the community. So transit fixed route is on page 124, and this is the largest expenditure area for SCI Ride. In the fixed route area, we're able to reduce expenditures under wages and benefits and fuel consumption. A portion of this reduction was due to efficiencies under SCI Ride 2.0. But in order to continue to transform the agency, it's vital that employees understand our mission and values. I've had the opportunity to have discussions with all of our employees over the last couple months, emphasizing the importance of being engaged in customer service. So whether their job is driving a bus, fixing a bus, or supporting service delivery, we are all one SCI Ride team. Customer service and focusing on the rider experience is going to be core to meeting the ever-changing needs of the community. We ended our contract with a subcontractor on a portion of our fixed route service to ensure we were delivering the excellent service our customers expect. We are also investing in our employees with support, development, and engagement because we cannot deliver excellence if we don't have high-performing teams that work collaboratively and collectively to attract riders. We're looking introspectively at some of the changes made under SCI Ride 2.0 to make sure these changes have not affected our customers and ensuring we are meeting their needs. Making small adjustments to how we operate will unify the organizational structure and our operating procedures so that we can continue to set the industry standards. Our Dial-A-Ride is on page 126. Dial-A-Ride is our complimentary door-to-door paratransit service for people who are unable to use our fixed route services. This allows access to members of the community who may not otherwise be able to leave their homes and allows others to stay in their homes. Working with HRDA closes the transportation gap for seniors and individuals with disabilities. HRDA has hired a part-time outreach specialist for Story County to meet with various entities to make sure that we are serving individuals with disabilities, they're aware of our services, and are able to utilize them. I want to draw attention to our almost 190 employees who work every day to connect passengers to the things that are important in their lives. They are an amazing group of individuals who deserve our thanks and appreciation for all that they do. It takes a workforce of dedicated employees to ensure SCI Ride remains an industry leader. I know it's a critical time for SCI Ride, and we know challenges are ahead, but we're excited because with adjustment brings opportunities. Opportunities for discussion, opportunities for introspection, and opportunities to make a difference. If we focus on connecting people, streamlining our processes, and delivering excellence, we will continue to meet the needs of a community as diverse and dynamic as Ames.
Barb, could you say something about the HERDA fare increase and what sort of pressure you anticipate that putting on SCI Ride's ADA services in the future?
So our ADA, so Dial-A-Ride has been trending down for us, and we weren't quite able to figure out why it was trending down. And I think part of it might have been it was a $2 fare to ride HERDA, a $2 fare to ride SCI Ride. So I think now that they've increased their fare, so there's no reason for people to ask for Dial-A-Ride services, right? They're just calling HERDA. But now that the fare's increased to $250, I just looked at it and our numbers are starting to trend up. So they're starting to understand, okay, now this is a Dial-A-Ride service that I need to be on because that's the $2 fare instead of the $250 fare. So I think my hope is that it will trend up, you know, our ridership. Obviously, it's never going to be high, but it'd be nice to get it to a more sustainable level.
Barbie mentioned the support from the state. What I'm particularly sensitive to is the support from the federal government. We couldn't run SCI Ride without our partners with the federal government. Could you give us a sense of what you're hearing about federal supports for transit right now?
That is a really good question. Federal support for transit right now is good, especially in the state of Iowa. So on the FAST Act, they gave us plus-ups in bus and bus facilities, so they went above what was required in the act, actually. So SCI Ride didn't receive that because we didn't have a project in it right now. Well, actually, let me take that back. SCI Ride did. We received those 6 buses. Those 6 minibuses is what paid for that. SCI Ride's also able to get what's called STIC money, Small Transit Intensive Cities money, which comes from the federal government. And that is, I'm working to lobby to try to get that increased. It's 2% that you get right now. So if you outperform transit agencies over 200,000, so you get 2% additional dollars in 6 funding categories. SCI Ride gets 5 of those funding categories. So we're hoping to lobby to get 3%. I don't know if that will happen, but it certainly would make a difference. It would bring a lot more money into SCI Ride. It went up 0.5% last year, I believe, and it brought SCI Ride an extra $200,000. I don't know what the total is because I think it varies, the amount they put in there.
Oh, so this year, what you put in the budget was?
Oh, what I put in for federal dollars, sorry, what I put in for federal dollars in the budget was 2.25.
Gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, million, sorry. No, $2.20, no.
Significant amount.
Yeah. And I put 800,000 for state.
Barb, could you comment on with that, if the decline in ridership does occur, what should council be prepared for in terms of to keep the same level of service? Is there going to be some increased level of funding required from all different entities to keep that up? Because it would seem that you might have maybe some less drivers, but you're going to just have less riders on the same routes, right? So I know I appreciate your positive thinking and planning ahead.
Right.
But I think we have to be realistic also as well and be prepared well in advance for what might be coming, down the pipe. And I think it's wise. We can plan for the worst, hope for the best. But can you comment on that? Because some of our reimbursement is based on ridership, correct?
Correct. So yes, state funding is tied to ridership as well as federal funding. So yes, that and that's a question we've asked ourselves, to be honest. That I think that's a difficult question based on the information that we have right now. The plan that we're taking is looking to technology, like I said, so that we can start to scale back our services. I think there's things that we need to look at. I mean, I'd like to figure out if there's ways to, make minor tweaks to our services that aren't necessarily affecting necessarily ridership. So for example, if a bus could be on a 10-minute interval, if it's currently on a 10-minute interval, could it be on a 12-minute interval? You know, is another minute wait or a 2-minute wait? I mean, I think there's a threshold there. So I think it's difficult for me to tell you right now because we really don't have a lot of data, and SCI Ride has been in a growth pattern for quite a while. So to be now in a trending downward pattern. So when I showed that ridership slide, I kind of showed a range, and what I used there was I used historically what has happened at SCI Ride when enrollment was at, we'll say 30,000. What did it look like when enrollment was at 29,000? Then I looked to our peer agencies to figure out what our peer agencies were doing to kind of get a threshold for that. And then I looked at what we were projecting from ISU, what their enrollments might be. So that's why I gave more of a range. So I'm hoping's not a good word. I'm calculating that, you know, the problem is there's just so many variables right now. And I think ISU doesn't have a good idea of how many students they're going to have. I don't think anybody expected it to be down this much this year. I don't think 1,600 was the number they were expecting. So I am confident in the people that work at SCI Ride. I think we have a lot of smart people. We adapt a lot. I think we make a lot of changes. So, I mean, I'm hopeful. But I think it's going to take a little bit, you know, it's going to take a little bit of time. You know, there's always things we can do, you know, maybe it's an uneven portion from the 3 funding partners, you know, for a 1-year time, or maybe it's something to help the students. I mean, the students are the largest contributor. You saw that. I mean, 47% of our budget comes from the students, about $5.8 million. The students are very supportive of SCI Ride. They gave us $9.50 per semester next year, which is a large increase from the students. So I think that tells you that they do care about SCI Ride and they want to do everything they can to make it work.
I think it's very helpful to have this kind of forecast at this point in time, looking forward a number of years. I presume that's also been shared with student government so they understand what's coming, because there may become some very hard decisions or some. We're going to have to basically invest in the service or do some hard analysis, as you will. I know, like you said, you have creative people on staff, but that's just telling us point blank, we have to be prepared for possibly some changes, either financial or for routes. So
yeah, and again, I think it needs to be and I know I keep saying this, but I do think it needs to be a thorough, thoughtful approach, because I don't want to make changes that would drive community riders away, because it would be nice to grow the community riders, but you understand that, you know, the vast majority of our riders are students, so you don't want to do things that drive them away. So like, for an example, I said we need to make small changes to SCI Ride 2.0 policies. One of the things we just changed is we don't guarantee transfers, so we don't hold a bus, but there's a couple places where we should be able to do that. You should be able to make that connection without having anybody late. And so we are making those changes. So we're trying to make kind of those small changes that help community riders. That doesn't necessarily help a student, because most students don't need to transfer. The bus is going to campus. That helps the community rider, because I'm riding from red route and now need to get to green route. So that allows them access to do that. So it's kind of the tweaking we're talking about. But I really think I did put some additional, our budget's lower than it has been, but I did put some additional money for a consultant, possibly, not a lot. I just put, I think, $25,000 in there. So if we wanted to have somebody come in and just look where would be smart ways to cut that balance our federal and state dollars, it would help us make better decisions. It would probably take more than that, but it's just a start.
A related thought, and it was just about the capacity. So with students, you have sort of a captive audience, but with the rest, with everybody else, the public ridership, I think that's where we have the greatest potential for growth in ridership. And so I was curious if you thought or what your strategy is for marketing SCI Ride, and if we can try to market, or if marketing more towards the community. Yeah, because again, the students are sort of going to ride it by default. And the greatest sustainability gains, I think, are when the community really embraces it and ditches the car model, right? Because the students, I know that the commuter to campus route is the greatest ridership number, but in terms of sustainability, I don't know that that's our greatest gain, because they would walk otherwise, or it's not like they can all take their cars onto Central Campus. So, so again, the greatest sustainability gain is when the community really embraces that. And so, yeah, just your thoughts on marketing, I guess.
Well, we used to have a marketing budget, but I mean, honestly, SCI Ride has
Why you look
grown
at me when you say that?
because
Oh.
SCI Ride has grown so fast. I mean, we really haven't been in a ridership decline for a long time. I have been at SCI Ride a while. You guys know that. And we used to do marketing. We used to do a lot of marketing to community riders and try to get people to ride the bus. I think it starts with small changes, especially if you're going to get choice riders. I mean, I think it's what is going to make you want to not get in your car one day a week, one day a month. I think we have a lot of bikers in this community. There's times when a bike is, it's snowing, whatever, maybe the bus makes sense. So it's other alternative ways like that. So I think there's opportunities there. Like I said, I've reached out to some of the community partners. I think Ames Community School Districts could be a very good partner.
Yeah.
I think DMAC is interested in at least having conversations. We have service to DMAC, but I don't know if the service is the right service on East. I mean, I don't know if the timing's right for the classes. I don't think they need like a fixed route like that, but they are willing to at least have a conversation to see, are there opportunities? And maybe they're not, but at least they're a conversation. I think if we could work on getting at least the inequities in the school system, I think that would help. I think that's what the school system is kind of looking for. I mean, I think ultimately they'd like K through 12 free, because if you did that, then you have kids riding, which helps get parents ride. And then that builds transit riders, right? So, you've been riding the bus a long time. You understand it's safe, things like that. But yeah, I think marketing is definitely something we are going to have to move forward on. And I think we got to figure out, I think we have to fix a few systemic things first, like those transfers, like I'm telling you about, just like a couple things, because I don't want people to get on the bus. I get you out of your car and then the experience isn't the experience you want. And then I'm not going to get you again, So I want it to be thoughtful, but I think that's great feedback for us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I know when you went through 2.0, the focus was really on getting students to campus as quickly as possible. And that's because we had so many riders and we were really trying to tweak out efficiencies. As you said, this may be an opportunity. I know that probably one of the biggest impediments to our citizens, our residents riding it downtown is the amount of time it takes and trying to catch the ride. So maybe we can use the same kind of a focus that we have,
Right.
that we've done with students, and just kind of say, okay, where else can we, accomplish that
Right.
if we have this, excess buses and the routes. So,
And I don't mean to take away from 2.0. SCI Ride 2.0 has been a good
Right.
change for us. I mean, it's made some very good improvements and changes. I think that we all knew we weren't getting 100% right out of the gate. I mean, even the board, when we approved that, knew that. So I think it's minor tweaking and just looking at, and things have changed, I mean, I don't think, like I said, I don't think ISU believed their enrollment would go down that much. I
Right.
think that's been a surprise to them.
So Barb, actually, my question is about 2.0 and the kind of tweaking you might anticipate. It seems to me, as I recall, that we cut some routes that were more public-oriented routes in order to increase the service for students. Is there the potential to reshift that balance? Or is that not what, looking at changes would entail?
When I'm talking about looking at changes, I'm talking about minor tweaking. I think if we were going to make changes like that, I think I definitely would want to look at bringing in a consultant, seeing if there's some way to fund that, creatively through some grants as well. So it wouldn't be all local dollars, just to help sort out how does it all play out. They have a lot of modeling, a lot of stuff like that. I'm talking about just the little policy changes, really just policy changes that we made internally that I don't think were intended to have the consequences they have, like not guaranteeing transfers. The intention for that is really the bus isn't going to sit for 5 minutes for you to get there. It's not that this bus is running 1 minute late and you're designed to meet up. We can hold that bus. So that's like that. We changed our what we call runner policy. So people running for the bus. And we used to wait for everybody running. We always waited, well, not even running, tootling along, we would wait. And so I think just if you're running for the bus, I think it's okay to wait. I think it's okay. All of us have been late. I think it's just a balance. It's finding a balance and not a black and white, we're never waiting for you kind of thing. So that's the kind of tweaking I'm talking about. But I still think there's opportunities to reach back out to the community and get more of those riders back.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks, Barb. Appreciate your positive attitude. And Rich, thanks for coming as well.
Thank
too.
you.
And good job. And we'll work on that marketing budget for you for.
Okay.
It is important.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have the privilege of presenting the City Council's and City Manager's budget. And then we will have Susan Guiazda and Diane Voss cover the City Clerk's Public Relations and Cable Television budget. This is a relatively short presentation compared to some of the others we've had. We do have some photos of things that you have participated in throughout the year. The budget for the City Council starts on page 196 and 197. You'll recall that a few weeks ago, you conducted a series of goal-setting retreats where you identified 5 fundamental values and 10 goals within those values that you'd like to pursue for the upcoming 2-year period. We are in the process of working through those and determining what the tasks are with each of those goals, which we intend to bring back to you hopefully at the second regular meeting in February, in order for you to understand what those steps are, the next steps for each one of those. And then we can go about the work as city staff of implementing your vision. You'll recall the City Council participates in a variety of annual and special events throughout the community. City Council night at the band shell, the 4th of July community breakfast, the downtown, there are some downtown Ames activities and Campus Town Action Association activities, Welcome Fest, and the Mayor and Council's bike ride. A couple of highlights for you related to special events. There are some changes to the 4th of July community pancake breakfast. This formerly was on Clark Avenue out here in front of City Hall. We will be moving the pancake breakfast this year to Van Shell Park to provide a change of scenery, some natural shade, and also deal with a particularly challenging logistical issue related to the tents. So we're hoping that this will create an exciting new twist on this very popular event. We are also...
You're going to have about 500 people wandering around City Hall on the 4th of July.
We'll put up a sign.
Signs.
Yeah.
It'll be well.
We also are going to be taking efforts to make our city-operated events more sustainable into the future. So we're looking at the types of handout materials that we provide people, promotional items, making those more durable, reusable, longer lasting, rather than materials that might be considered more disposable. And also with things related to food, plates, cups, utensils, we're looking into making those reusable or compostable into the future instead of the disposables. I do want to warn you, though, we have a healthy supply of existing materials that as we make this transition, we will intend to use those up before we convert into things that are more longer lasting or compostable, sustainable. So don't be surprised if you see some of those disposable items for a while longer. Some of the major projects that we've been working on are listed up here. A number of these have been covered in other budget presentations, so I won't go into all of them in detail, but I do want to highlight a few. We have been working on some major utility projects among various departments, including coordinating a waste to energy study that is a component of this and past budgets. And coordinating resource recovery and power plant activities here in the next couple of months as we go through a crucial outage to return unit number 8 to service. We've also been working to address the council's former goal to improve community internet. And so that's involved a lot of discussions with Metronet as they prepare to enter the community and ensure that they have all the answers they need so that we minimize the disruption to our residents and provide good customer service to them just as a business customer of ours in the community. As well, we are working to finalize the draft scope for the RFP related to community internet improvements that might be undertaken by the city. We hope to bring that back to you here later this winter for your comments before we can go out and hopefully find a consultant who can help us improve things there. There are a couple of other items. Deb has been working on 2 task forces related to ISU. One is a micromobility task force to determine how we as a community might best accommodate scooters in particular. That's a big component of micromobility as a broader spectrum, but scooters are a big component of it. So that's what I think of when I think about micromobility. So how do we handle where they go, when they operate, what happens when somebody leaves it in a place that they shouldn't leave it, things like that, and how do they interact with ISU as well. So Deb's been working on that, as well as a childcare task force to determine how we might improve childcare options in the community.
Excuse me, Brian, does micromobility also include electric bikes as well too, or rent bikes or not?
I believe that's part of the scope.
So it's both scooters and the ride share. And I think that council, city manager, and I reported back that Iowa State right now has been on record that they really don't want scooters on campus, and so they're not that they wouldn't change, but they have. So that's going to be a real challenge. One of our conversations with Dr. Winterstein. So be interested to hear back the report in terms of what they may change that. But anyway, when do we set that coming back to us then? Tomorrow?
I'm not coming tomorrow.
No, I'm not either.
I'm hoping the first meeting in March, the first council meeting, Tashik Kerr had been helping me with it. So I'm working on the report right now, and that's my plan to bring it to council that first meeting in March.
Great. Thanks, Deb.
Yep, thank you.
We've had some staff transitions that I wanted to briefly highlight. Bob Kindred, you'll recall, retired back in April, and Deb came on board in July. Tashik Kerr took another job in Illinois last month, so we'll be kicking off a recruitment to find another management analyst here shortly. Since we're a small office, these kinds of transitions are a big deal to us. And so we are looking forward to the changes that lie ahead with another staff person to help work on your initiatives and other initiatives throughout the community. Another initiative I wanted to highlight is the Ames Community Institute. This is an effort to provide greater accessibility and transparency about how city operations work to individuals who are in underrepresented populations. We have worked to provide presentations from various city department heads about city operations, tours of city facilities, answer questions, and really just open the doors to the city operation and ensure that we're doing what we can to explain and make accessible the work of the city organization.
How long have we been doing that?
This is the second group that's gone through, and I think this was in the late fall. Is that right? For the second group.
Is that sort of similar to the Citizens Academy?
Pardon me?
Similar to the Citizens Academy?
Yes.
How many sessions is it?
I think we have 4 or 5.
What kind of results have we seen from this in terms of maybe increased involvement or?
Well, I know I can share that we had one of the participants from the first cohort applied and was appointed to one of the boards and commissions.
Parks and Rec, I think.
Parks and Rec. And then we had one person tell me on graduation night that you'll be seeing me again in terms of applications. So I think that that's really been a tremendous opportunity to expose individuals to what's going on in the city, and they've expressed great appreciation for what they do. So I just commend the city manager and all the different department heads.
We use this group for other reasons too. Give you a good example. Talk about focus groups. We use that group as a focus group for our Ames 2040 plan. So when we want to reach out to different groups, get different perspectives, we have a ready-made group here who can offer us a valuable insight and a perspective that we don't always receive in local government. So it's been very valuable. More importantly, I think they feel comfortable now that they understand government a little bit more, and the people who participate feel they have a relationship where if they have a problem with the police department, the fire department, or public works or Parks and Rec, they know that they've met the department heads. They feel comfortable enough to call them if there's an issue. So I think it's working really well. And of course, I want to give credit to my advisory group, who's really spearheads that, which is Reg Stewart, Edna Clinton, as you know, work with me on that. So I think we're doing a real good job there of getting people who are normally not involved. You don't see at city council meetings. You don't see on your boards and commissions. Don't contact you many often. I think we're building a relationship with that group, making them comfortable to interact with government. I think it's very powerful and it's been successful.
Are we using that group at all for the census outreach?
Good point. Susan hasn't put together the whole program, but that would be certainly a group we should talk to.
I would think it would be a good way to reach some of the hard to count populations in the community.
Just before I wrap up here and turn it over, I don't have a slide regarding it, but on page 198 of your budget are the city council special allocations. And I just wanted to touch briefly on those. So on that page, you'll find the outside funding requests, which you will discuss at the city council wrap-up or at the budget wrap-up session next week on an individual basis. We have a report for you regarding those. You'll also find that we have funding in the budget for a climate action plan, $130,000. That's in the draft budget under that special allocation, and then $125,000 for the broadband improvements. I highlight these because they are different than what we've had regularly. There are some ongoing things that show up in that special allocations page on a regular basis, the sustainability coordinator and some other efforts. But those final two, the climate action plan and the broadband improvements, are unique this year.
And Deb and Susan will be involved in the greenhouse gas inventory currently, and be involved in take the leadership on the climate action plan from our office too.
Steve, is this the portion of the budget that you asked council to give you some direction if you want any changes so that you can make adjustments for next Tuesday night or not? You mentioned that, I think last Friday or something, you want us to be, not to ask, not to
Surprise me. It might not even be in this area. There might be other programs. If you're thinking about adding something into the budget, it'd be helpful if you let me know so I can be prepared to show you where the money could come from if there's a majority vote of the council. So it's not just in this area. It could be a new program that fits under a different activity.
Well, in particular, because it's under city council special allocations, I just want to make sure council's aware that that was a request from city manager, just so we can go ahead and keep this thing moving forward. So is there any thoughts on that? Not trying to add to it or change it, but just if everyone's comfortable, we'll just keep on moving forward, but we'll try and avoid doing that on Tuesday night if we can.
So
Why don't we go through the budget, and then right before we leave today, we're going to go over a list of decisions for you.
Okay.
And maybe somebody will have some ideas that
Okay.
they want to ask about. Gather information.
Your preference would be is just to wait until that point in time.
Yeah, we'll be right. When we get done with all the presentations, we could do that. That's all right.
So I
Gloria?
have one other question, and that's regarding the Story County Housing Trust. Are we getting any kind of report on what's being done with that money that we're allocating to them?
I'm not sure we give a presentation before the council, though. Have we ever given one?
We did one
There
time.
was a
The first
report,
one?
the last.
We did about a little over a year ago, I
Yeah.
think.
It might be something you could ask for, all the other boards and commissions kind of give reports, perhaps either a written or an oral report, either to go over what the year coming is, what you accomplish at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year to show what their goals are and what they're going to use the money for? I don't know which makes more sense. Amber, are they on a fiscal year basis too, I imagine? So you can either do the beginning of the year as they lay out their program of work or at the end of the year to report on what they accomplished.
Yeah,
Or they could do it earlier, they could do it with the written report.
I'm just curious
Right.
because I feel like it took a while to get started, and now I'm not really sure. I know Vanessa has mentioned the shift to the renters assistance payouts and that sort of thing, but I don't really know where we are as far as how much of the money has gone to that. And
Written would be fine. It wouldn't have to be
Yeah.
written would be fine. It wouldn't have to be oral or anything like that. I think.
And there was an article in the Tribune here recently about that program too, and what was going on as well, which is
So if you'd
helpful.
like that, again, anytime you can make motions to direct us to do that, that'd be good. It's appropriate if you want to.
Is that in order to make a motion like that tonight or some other, does it need to be on the agenda?
It doesn't need to be on it. I don't believe it does because you're not voting, you're not taking any action. You're just asking for a
Asking
report.
you to reach out for a
Yeah.
report, right?
so I would move that we ask you to get a brief written report on where the money is going and how it's being used.
Do you want it each year?
Yes.
Do you want it at the beginning of the year or the end of the year, or a conclusion of the
Budget
year?
time.
Or
Yeah, at budget time.
at budget time where they're planning for the next fiscal year to use how they're going to use it?
Well, at this point, I'd like to know where the money has gone from this last budget, but I'd appreciate knowing ahead of time what the plan is for the
plan.
money.
Second.
So one of the things we're going to try and work on is making sure our motions are crisp.
So I would move that the city manager's team reach out to get a report from the Story County Housing Trust on where the first allocations of money have been spent, and for subsequent years to give us a plan for how the money will be spent at budget time.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you, Gloria. That was well said. Okay. Any questions?
This is our budget time, not their budget. time.
Yes, our budget
Yeah.
time.
All right. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
If there's nothing further for me, then I'll turn it over to Diane for the
Any-
city clerk's
Any
office budget.
further questions for Brian? Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
So the city clerk's budget is contained on pages 200 and 201. We're going to start with revenues. So our main source of revenue is beer and liquor license fees. So last fiscal year, that amount equated to $82,519. And that equates to 85% of our total revenues. In 1819, there were 198 licenses issued to 155 establishments. So to further break that down, there were 102 licenses that allowed on-premise consumption. Excuse me. So the state Alcoholic Beverages Division sets the requirements on who can have what licenses. And so that particular category is always just bars and restaurants. 53 of the licenses were for off-premise consumption, and that includes convenience stores and grocery stores. Now, there are establishments that are allowed wine tasting events, even though they do not have on-premise consumption. And that was made possible by the City Council's adoption of an ordinance back in 2011. And so what that does is requires those establishments to file a compliance plan with the police department. Now, all 102 of the on-premise licenses can have wine tastings without contacting the city at all. But there are 6 establishments that have filed their compliance plans with the PD, and they have been approved. So every year when these establishments have those events, we get calls because they're like, how can those establishments have that? They don't have a liquor license. Well, it's through that ordinance. So those establishments are Chocolate Stom, Cyclone Liquors, Hy-Vee No. 2, Hy-Vee Drugstore, and both Fairway stores. So even though they don't meet the requirements for on-premise consumption, they are allowed to do that as long as they file their dram shop, their compliance plan, and provide us with an insurance certificate. You set a record for the number of 5-day permits or licenses that you allowed last year. So that number was 42. 15 of those were part of a special event that you also approved. 8 were for Special Class B, and that only allows beer and wine. 26 was a record number as well, and those were allowing beer, wine, and liquor. 8 of them were only allowing beer and wine coolers. So where did those events happen? 2 of them were in Campus Town. Record number were allowed on Iowa State property. Looking back at that, they were a lot of wedding receptions and other anniversary type receptions at the Alumni Center, Ryman Gardens, Jack Trice, and new this year was at Hanson Ag Center. 3 of those occurred in downtown Ames, and then 2 were at Ames Ford Lincoln, which were for the Chamber and AEDC. Regarding those fees, 65% of the fee that is paid annually goes to the city. And I've told you before that the fee is set by the state, and that hasn't changed for 35 years. So it's been static since 1985. For Class C, which is for bar and hotels, that type of restaurants, that fee is $2,028, and $1,318 comes to the city for each license. We also get 100% of the fee for beer permits, and they range from $75 to $200. That fee is based on the square footage of the establishment. And then the Sunday sales, which is a very small amount of that license, goes all to the state. So in addition to the liquor license and beer permits, we issued 752 permits in 15 different categories. That is 117 more than last year. However, our budget did not reflect any increase for the majority of those because they came from temporary obstruction permits. That was 153, which was also a record. We do not charge for those. So they're not very labor intensive. They are approved administratively, and they involve the city clerk's office and the traffic engineer. Transient merchants, transient merchant permits increased, and they were at 61 this year. I'll talk about those in a little bit. And then what else increased was our notarization and certification requests. So I don't know if you have had a need for a notary, but banks in Ames have started charging. So our office has become wildly popular when someone needs a notary because we don't charge. It is one of the free services. So transient merchant permits totaled 61. So 34 of those came from applicants wanting to sell fireworks. That was actually down from 2017, when 47 were issued for that purpose. So prior to the legalization of fireworks in 2016, we only issued 8 total transient merchant permits. Of course, fireworks were not allowed to be sold in Iowa. So I would imagine that if that ever goes back, we won't be issuing many of those. The fee for transient merchant permits is $35, and that is valid for 60 days. We do have some who are repeats, so they come for most of the summer. And if they're here for 3 months, they have to, of course, have 2 permits. Fireworks can only be sold in certain zoning districts in Ames because you placed some additional restrictions on that back on June 27th of 17. So a lot of the vendors come from Missouri, and they do not understand why we will not let them just put up a temporary stand wherever. So if we do not allow them to be where they want to be, they are often no longer interested, and they move on to another city. 27 vending permits were issued last year. Fee waivers were requested and approved for 17 of those. The fee is $50. It's valid for 1 year. So with those 17 that were waived, that equated to $850. Most of those were from special events. A very small amount of revenue comes from development application fees. So as an example, my office receives $25 of the annexation application. That fee is $200. But in contrast, the cost to record those documents, it comes to about $300. And then there's additional mailings, especially with annexation. There's a lot of certified mailings required. And so our most recent voluntary annexation, which had to be heard by the City Development Board because we were within 2 miles of an urbanized city, which happened to be Kelly, went to CDB, and then they issue findings of fact, and it about triples the documents that would be recorded if it didn't go to City Development Board. And so the cost for that recording alone was $357. There were 13 zoning board of adjustment meetings held last year. 27 cases were filed. As you know, that's not going to be the case for this year because of the guest lodging ordinance. And so they are now meeting twice a month. They normally meet twice a month from April to October, but of course they're meeting twice a month now through October. And those filing fees range from $75 to $150. And then we split that revenue among planning and housing, city attorney, and the city clerk's office. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about expenses. Publishing legal notices and minutes and ordinances is our largest expense. So I have estimated that we will spend about $42,000 this year. And last year, the cost equated to $41,828. As you probably know, that fee is set by the legislature. And so we can't change it. The average minutes cost about $1,000 per meeting. Last year, we published 262 notices. That did include hearing notices, council minutes, and ordinances. Also, recording is a significant expense, which I just talked to you about, the recording fees for annexations. We also, the bulk of the recordings are agreements, deeds, easements, and plats of survey. And subdivision documents by our code are required to be recorded by the developer. So that is usually a major expense that we do not bear. 141 documents were recorded last fiscal year. That is actually down a little bit. We recorded 150 in the previous fiscal year. Elections, major expense for us. So the estimate on my 2019-20 budget was $20,000 for the regular city election. It was a different year for elections because we actually had 3. So the actual cost for the city's portion had gone down, which was the result of the joint elections with school boards. And so we paid $11,580.88. We also share our portion with Mary Greeley because they're on the same ballot. So then on September 10 of 2019, we have this special election for the Healthy Life Center. We were the only item on that ballot, and so they did have to bring in all the poll workers for that one item, and that election cost $16,898.30. So that about ate up the whole $20,000 that I had budgeted. We did have a runoff election for Ward 4. The cost of that was $7,845. So it almost doubled what I had put in there. $36,324.58 was the cost of the elections in 2019. So I will have to amend that line item and add in that 16,000 plus. The 2020-21 proposed budget for the city clerk's office does not include any requests for capital. And now I'm going to move on to some of the highlights of our office. So our files management system. Next slide, please.
Oh, you've got.
I can do it too. Yeah.
So we can use that. Oh, okay, sorry, Dwayne. Okay, that's a lifesaver for us because it cuts our workload down considerably, and we're still able to provide the same customer service. So we have an average of 1,100 documents accessed monthly. So that's not just by the city clerk's staff. It is 53 total city staff can now access those documents. They're restricted use clients, so they can't change it. It's very efficient for them because prior to that, they would need something and have to call us or come down, and we'd have to email it to them. And now they look it up themselves. They're able to double click on it, open up the actual document, and then they can print, save it, email it, or view it. So we ask them not to save it because we don't need duplication and they're not going anywhere. They'll always be there. Our biggest users are legal, the legal department, public works, and planning. And so what that system allows us to do is to query expirations in documents as well, so nothing falls through the cracks. So every month we query those that are going to be expiring for the next 90 days, and then we send reminders to the department directors on those items that something has to be done before the expiration. So we send reminders to department heads 40 times. There's 40, we send 40 reminders per month. And what that also allows us to do is to track our insurance certificates so that they never expire before a project is done. And we also track about 140 letters of credit and cash securities and performance bonds a year. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Freedom of Information Act requests because you guys have been involved in some of those. So last year, they continue to increase. And last year, I received a total of 96 requests. 44 of those were considered non-routine. So those are the ones that I act on. And we do have an open records request policy, which was set in 2009 that we follow. So if it were for a police report or a letter of compliance and someone came into the department and asked for that, those are considered routine. So those are provided and there's not a lot of research on the gathering of the document that is needed. So last year, the total amount of time and materials charged to the requesting parties of the 44 requests was $11,898.05. However, we only collected $1,192.88 because when you send the estimate to the requesting party, about 75% of the time, they then decide they don't need the documents that badly. They do not need that many of the documents. Sometimes they lessen the request. So we do not collect much of the fees that are charged, but we still have to go through the practice of gathering it because you don't really know how long it's going to take, as you do not know how many documents you're going to have. So the time is actually expensed. The materials are not, they aren't copied, but the time is an expense that we don't recoup.
Diane, could I ask a question about that? You're only describing document requests that are coming to you in the form of an open records request, isn't that right? Or because if someone just called and said, I'm looking for a letter of compliance, but they don't actually file an open records request?
We do not, no.
Okay, so you're not talking
No,
about that.
They don't need to file. Quite honestly, we don't even make them send anything in writing sometimes. I've gotten Freedom of Information Act requests that have just come in over the phone. But we've never required them to have a written form to have a start on that request.
Okay, thanks.
Also, I want to talk about our volunteers in the city clerk's office. I'm part of the city manager's office, so I'm paying tribute because I know they're watching. They told me they would. And I want to pay tribute to the kiosk volunteers. The one person who has been with me the entire time that I've been city clerk and 6 years prior is Brian Espelin, and he comes twice a week. Very dependable and hardly ever misses unless he's ill or traveling. He's quite the gadabout, but they actually gave us 952 hours of service last year. And so they do provide a valuable service, and we hear from customer services clerks that they really know when they're not there, because then the citizens migrate over to them to ask the questions, and so they are helpful. So this is my favorite part of my presentation. Your service to the citizens of Ames requires a great deal of time, as you know, and much of that is spent in these chambers. So there were 50 council meetings in fiscal year 2018-19. The total number of hours that you spent in those meetings was 104.5. However, that equates to 2.38 hours per meeting. So you became much more efficient because that was way down from the 3.42 from the last fiscal year. I'm sure you had a lot of extra time to do other things. So you invested a lot of time, but you also accomplished a lot. So you actually adopted 584 resolutions and 48 ordinances. So there were 48 new laws that you enacted. And there were 949 items on the agendas. And that's a lot. So we've had 753, we've had 824, we've never reached into the 900. So you got a lot done. So that's all I have. Is there any question for me?
I have a question that's maybe more for the city manager. I'm just following up on, you mentioned the temporary obstruction permits that goes through your office. My question is about what's the policy used to decide whether to approve them when it has to do with construction activity that's obstructing sidewalks? I'm particularly interested in that. I think the less we can obstruct sidewalks during construction activity, the better. Sometimes it's unavoidable. But I'm just wondering, do you have like a duration in mind that you know, changes it into like a more substantial request, or is there any way you can characterize this policy?
So we actually rely on the expertise of the traffic engineer, Damian Pregitzer, or another one of the street employees who is Brad Becker, is very valuable to us. And they go out, Brad goes out and looks at the situation. They pull up data on GIS, and it's not just a given by any means. So they also have certain safety standards, and they see which safety standard is the most applicable to that area. So there are some times when the sidewalk is allowed to be closed, but the requesting party has to create an alternate route. You might have seen that. And then it depends on what kind of project it is, but if there's any case where there could be danger to passersby, they don't allow it. Very seldom does that happen, but in the duration, they tell us, the contractor comes in and tells us, well, I think I'm going to need, a week. I think I'm going to need 2 weeks. So that is not always a given either to be approved. So they tell them, well, we will approve it for 1 week, but we want you to make substantial progress. And if in fact that doesn't get done, you have to come back in and request an extension. So they have all kinds of data that they use. Cul-de-sacs sometimes present problems because, the traffic flow isn't there. But quite honestly, it's major construction projects that could be going through the city with other departments that need to close the sidewalks more than just temporary obstruction permits.
It's a classic example of the challenge we face in local government. We try to provide excellent customer service. We have competing customers. So you have a developer who wants to get the building built, but it disrupts pedestrian movement. It's really emphasizes itself when you go in the campus town or downtown area where you build buildings out to the sidewalk. And therefore, to remember on Sheldon and Lincoln Way, the development went up there, those sidewalks were closed for almost a year during development. So we try to facilitate and let those projects be built. It's very hard to build it in a tight space without impacting those sidewalks. So I can't tell you we have a maximum amount. I think you want us to try to facilitate that. Now, many times sometimes you'll see they cover sidewalks and you walk underneath them when construction is going on. That's possible, although still dangerous. Other times we try to reroute around it, but sometimes we actually have to close the sidewalk. So you're going to have to tell us if you think we haven't reached that right balance, because I know we're inconveniencing people. And you'll notice some of them took a year, some of those projects. And it's usually in campus town and downtown. Unfortunately, that has the highest pedestrian movement through it. But if you can think about those buildings being right up to the property line, it's tough for them to have the space they need. In fact, remember on Lincoln Way and Sheldon, we had to close down Lincoln Way to give them the space they need to put their construction truck. So it's a balance all the time. We're not perfect at it. We try to satisfy both sides, but probably not as good as you'd like, but probably as good as we can do if we want to try to keep both citizens groups happy.
Thanks for the explanation.
So I have a question, and I don't know whether this is something that's a question for Diane or whether it's a philosophical interpretation that Steve wants to wax poetic on. But it sounds to me like it's been a very, very long time since we increased our costs related to development documents, and we're eating a lot of the cost for recording. So how should we be understanding that? Is that something that we're considering an investment in development? Or I don't know how to interpret the fact that it sounds like we're spending about $275 on every development that we record.
Are you talking just in the recording covering our costs?
Well, I think
We haven't
Diane-
raised our fees in reviews of, in planning and housing. A lot of the time spent on reviewing plans and specifications. We haven't increased a lot of those fees in a long time. But you're talking just covering our costs of recording?
I'm
Certainly-
just going with what Diane said, which is, I think I noted that we get about $25 for the city clerk on these projects, and then recording the documents is $300. So I don't know whether that's something that we should be increasing our fees for, because we haven't done it in a long time.
Right.
We aren't keeping up, or.
We're certainly not covering our costs in that area.
Actually, I thought that we were not doing that as a practice because we want to encourage development. And many years ago, I believe they had a meeting with different developers.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's an impediment at that cost.
Well, and you said that was established in the 90s? Is that what I heard, or did I not hear it correctly? When did they establish the
The fees?
fee?
Oh, the fees. Actually, yeah, it was 96, I believe. Yeah. Well, I don't know if we established the fees. Now, the development fee for annexation has increased from $100 to 200. I believe when we discussed that at some point, the benefit is the increased property taxpayers. So,
So there is a fee, the recording fee is actually out-of-pocket expense to us that we're not recouping, right?
Mhm.
That's different than, there is a cost of staff time, but it's not out of pocket. See, it's a philosophical issue. Do you want to cover your out-of-pocket costs at least? That would be the recording. You can also increase the other ones. Do you want to provide free, free service for, let's say, what do you say we offer free service for
notaries.
notaries, let's say?
Mhm.
There's a time involved. It's not out of pocket. So it's philosophical what you like to do. We've talked about it. It's not like those increases are going to change the budget significantly. You're not going to yield $50,000, $100,000, but it certainly is appropriate to cover your costs if you'd like to, actual costs.
I just wanted to understand it a little bit more. I don't know that council wants to make a change in that, but I'm recalling the discussions about parking meter fees and how we didn't do anything with the parking meter fees for 20 some years. And suddenly we decided we had to do something. So it may be one of those fees that we should be looking at
Sure.
if the other costs continue
Yeah.
to rise.
As we told you before, we try to make sure that building fees cover our costs. Now that's staff time too. Not just out of pocket, but staff time. But I don't think we're covering all the costs here, even the out of pocket costs.
We don't have a lot of annexations either. I mean, we have 1 to 2 max a year. With temporary obstruction permits, that it was believed that we have requirements for certificates of insurance. And what was happening is if we require a fee, they don't come in and tell us that they're going to be obstructing any right of way. And so it was felt that the benefit was getting that insurance certificate, which did protect the city from liability on
But it
that.
takes time, staff time. So it's philosophical.
Okay, any further questions for Diane? Thank you.
Susan?
Good evening. The Public Relations Office budget starts on page 204, and I'll be covering that budget along with the Media Production Services budget. Just to remind you, a couple years ago, we developed a vision statement for the Public Relations Office, sort of a filter through which we focused our efforts, and that was to brand a positive identity for the city of Ames, and that the city of Ames be recognized as the premier provider of municipal services in a vibrant, innovative, progressive university community. We basically look at this through a two-pronged approach. We do education, public outreach, and information sharing, but also we can't forget to do some advocating and promoting. When we do good things, we want to make sure that citizens are aware of those things. So I've been in this business quite a long time, and if you can stay focused on your vision, then it's really only the tools that change over time. And the tools have changed a lot in the communication world. And some of the tools we use are traditional tools, and they've been around for as long as I've been here and before I came here. And based on survey results, they probably will be around for a while. And those are traditional things like newsletters and paper pamphlets and brochures. So what you see up on the slide is the new Good Neighbor Guide, which is a small brochure that we hand out. You talked about the Neighborhood Blitz. With the police and fire department, they would hand out Good Neighbor Guides to students and to others who have asked for it. Cityside is a monthly publication that goes out in the utility bills. And that's we have a brand new look for Cityside. We do try to update our materials so they look current and exciting. Above that is the transit director recruitment brochure, which was done completely online. There was never a paper copy, but just a couple of years ago, we would do full color brochures and mail those out. And now we do it. We basically direct people to websites. As you all know, we have lots of social media pages, and those remain very active. Social media is, for a lot of people, very inexpensive, but it does take up a lot of time. And sometimes I think that is, people forget that. You have to kind of plan and feed it and nurture it and watch it, because in the world that we live in, people expect information quickly. And so you can't leave your people waiting too long before they get tired or irritated. We have a website that we update. We have more than 40 people within the city of Ames that have access to the website and update it, many of them on a daily basis. We do public education and speaking. We do multiple recognition events. As the mayor recognized several businesses recently at the Smart Business Challenge Luncheon. We do other kinds of recognition events, and I anticipate we'll have several more this year, which is always a good thing to have lots of events, because it means your community is active and your city is out there. And also, I wanted to make sure that people knew that I don't want to take credit for everything. In our print shop, we have a part-time print shop manager and a graphics specialist, Courtney Hinders, and she is the person that's helping me do these things. I don't have a huge graphics background, and so when you see a redesigned newsletter, that's Courtney's footprint all over that, and the Good Neighbor Guide. So we work together, we meet regularly, and it is just so helpful to have that professionalism on staff. Just quickly, sometimes people wonder, when we send press releases out, and I do send out 3 to 4 a week. Some weeks are heavier than others. That process, just so you understand, I think you all get a copy of the press release by email. You can sign up for it on our website under e-notification to get copies of the press releases. They go out to a media list that's probably over 50 right now. It's not just media, but also organizations like the Chamber of Commerce and the Convention and Visitors Bureau and other groups that have asked to be on that list. Many people at Iowa State get them as well. And then from that point on, it gets posted to our website, and it goes on a news section on the front of the web. And then from there, it gets automatically posted to social media. And so it'll go with the link back to the website. And then from there, you might see that same press release end up in Cityside. It could be turned into a graphic to be used later on social media, or it could actually end up as a video. So that's kind of the process. When we take a concept, an idea, an event, or a program, and we start with a press release, it kind of just grows from there. So just a quick education there. One of the big things that we're working on this year for 2020 is the Claim Ames Census 2020 campaign. So far, we kicked that off January 13th with a press conference. What you see up here is all the people so far that have stopped over at our photo booth. We were at the Martin Luther King Day celebration at the Ames Middle School. We've had a couple of other photo booth opportunities. And again, I don't want to be the one taking credit. This is a lot of people's creativity at work. Courtney Hinders in the print shop, as well as our part-time staff in media production services. They are playing a key role in this. We know that this is going to be a big deal for us. We know that this is going to be a multi-monthly campaign, and it'll extend through April. We will really kick it off strong after spring break. So right now you'll just start seeing us. We're still in the awareness phase, and the bus boards are out. I've seen pictures of them, but I haven't actually seen one yet. And we'll be doing traditional newspaper and radio, but we'll also be doing a lot of digital. We've partnered with Model Farm at Iowa State University, which is the ISU student-staffed but professionally led creative agency. And we're looking again at that peer-to-peer word of mouth for students to really get them to understand that the census is not about where you're from, it's where you're living right now, and that's Ames. So Claim Ames, we think that tagline works well. And I always put this slide up. It's sort of my brain. It's my thinking about just the next couple of months. I always send you these dates so you have them for your own calendars. But this is just for the next couple of months, some bigger events that we have planned. We have eco chats. I think several other departments have mentioned those. We have a boards and commissions luncheon coming up. March to the Mailbox is a census event, eco fair, bike to work week, breakfast, as well as the bike ride, council night at the band shell. I will make sure to get these on your calendars, but as you can see, once again, another busy year. And it's great to have all those opportunities to get out. Those are opportunities for council to meet with citizens, but also an opportunity for the city of Ames to share our story with our residents. And I mentioned media production services, which is on page 206. We have been without a full-time staff person in Channel 12, formerly Channel 12, for almost a year. We think that we're going to get that resolved very soon, but in that interim period, I cannot say enough good things about our part-time staff who has stayed with us. Alicia Abner is in the back right now filming us today. She works a lot of hours and is really the creative brainchild behind our census videos. She does a great job working with staff. Kate Barbaglia is usually our meetings person. She's usually the go-to person. So you don't see these people a lot. They're behind the scenes, and sometimes you may not recognize them, but they're really working hard, and they've kept the station running. Allison Kaiser has taken a job at Iowa State, so she won't be with us as much. She's kind of our on-call person. But our part-time people have really exploded our video presence on social media. So they understand the importance that media production services is not just Channel 12. It's not just a MediaCom channel. It's really its strength is being able to go mobile and to show, not tell people about the programs and services of the city of Ames. It'll be a key point in our Claim Ames campaign as well. And that's all I have for you. Any questions?
Susan, are we doing anything to make our website more ADA accessible or the public documents more accessible through our website?
So we are sort of looking to other cities and discussing best practices and sort of the low-hanging fruit, like the getting rid of, we were doing a lot of design by table.
Mm-hmm.
We've told people, and what you're seeing are a lot simpler pages because we've had to take that stuff out. I just had a question the other day of how do I get two pictures to go side by side on our website? And I said, you get lucky because without the design by table, things shift and move. And with the responsive design, you are doing it on different scales. So we're having simpler pages, but in a sense, I think that's good for everybody to have pages that are cleaner and more simple. That's kind of the easy stuff. We are making sure that our alt tags are very clear, that we have the links formatted the correct way. But how are we going to address the big ADA issues of PDFs and forms? We don't have it figured out.
Is that going to be part of the updates to the city's ADA transition plans?
We hope so. We hope that, my hope is that companies that do websites will get there for us. We're working on doing the little things we can do. And I think changes are coming. But at this point, we're making the simple changes we can make, and we're trying to simplify our pages and take things off. And that really is what it may come down to, is that we take things off, because if they're not compliant, then we just have to remove them.
I just read an article about California mandating that all municipalities have ADA compliant documents on their websites. I think this was a mandate in 2017. And so cities were given 2 years to do it. And they were told, if you cannot make these documents compliant, you must remove them. And so because of the cost and the difficulty, suddenly many, many municipal documents have disappeared from California's websites because it just wasn't possible to meet the burden of.
Yeah, and we've talked about that is the unfortunate outcome that we would be left with, is that if it's not something that we know how to make compliant, we have to just take it off.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an Iowa law along those lines as well, or is that a federal requirement? Because you mentioned California, so I'm just wondering whether
I'm not aware of it.
I'm not aware
I mean,
Right,
It's part of,
You're just sort of looking down the road.
Right.
it's part of the ADA,
Yeah.
but it's, the state of California accelerated the process and gave a deadline by which compliance had to occur. Otherwise, I think it's just kind of out there, and unless somebody forces you to do it or sues you because you haven't done it.
Susan, on page 207, you have where we list the number of original program YouTube views and then Facebook page views. I'm just intrigued to see a precipitous decline in both of those.
Well, I think what we had was the donut disrespect videos in the previous year. And we, when you have a viral campaign and it goes and it's very, very popular, that makes your statistics not look quite as good the next year. We've had solid years, but that was a banner year.
Well, it's just council's committed to, trying to really engage the community, and not saying that we're not doing it. I was just intrigued by what was the, so that was that one campaign really was
Yeah, that was very, very popular. A couple of years ago, we had a video, and I'm sure many of you remember it, of one of our firefighters giving a cat CPR. And that had over 1 million views. And so that your statistics are a little out of whack after that. But we have, I study the back end. I look at what posts do well, and I'm always impressed, and I'm trying to get the words out to our people on the street. People like to know what we're doing. They like to see when we've had an electric outage, why, what happened. A post about our how much salt we've used. Look at our salt supply; it's really dwindling. And I get those pictures now. People will send them to me. So I think there's just this growing understanding that while it might not be interesting to our own employees who do this day in, day out, what if they snap a picture and send it to me? Well, that's pretty exciting to a resident who doesn't see it all the time. And I think that just takes a little bit more time. I tell them what the responses are. Hey, do you know the statistics on your photo were this? And then I think that encourages more of that. So.
okay.
I have a question about another one of the numbers under the heading number of live or archived meeting online views, the Granicus views, that reduced by a factor of 10 from 48,000 to 5,000 over a year.
I think we talked about it. We started going different ways. So in addition to getting on the website, you could get the archived video on YouTube.
Oh, okay, that's why.
Or you could get it. We are still not past our software glitch with Facebook Live. So we're still just YouTube Live. And one of our dreams is to get us back on Facebook Live for these meetings. But the fact that we're offering more opportunities for people
that
to
makes
watch.
sense. Thanks.
Okay, any questions for Susan? Thank you very much. Appreciate it, John.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Before I get into numbers and things, I'll just do kind of a quick overview of the legal department. Most of you know this before. My slides aren't all that different from last year, but up here we've got a list of the kind of things we do or what our goals are: high quality legal services, sound and objective legal advice, representation, trust, ethics, professionalism, responsiveness. I will say that we're really big on being open. We don't make people schedule appointments with us. They can walk in the door, they can call, they send us an email, they get a response to it. Sometimes it's like, I can't answer that now, but I'll get back to you later. But we try to be very, very responsive, and we work very hard at that. And I preach that to my staff all the time. Here's our small group. We're the smallest department in city government, and we have the three attorneys sitting there. On one side of me is Vicki Fielmeyer, and the other side is Jane Chang. Vicki's been with us maybe 2.5 to 3 years. Jane's a couple years now. We stole Jane away from the Story County Attorney's Office, and I literally called Jessica Reynolds and said, Jessica, I'm sorry, my friend, I'm stealing Jane from you. And where she was doing prosecutions, and she did prosecutions of simple misdemeanors, which are done here at the courthouse and City Hall. So she was over here all the time. So we're very glad to have Jane. She handles most of our prosecutions, but everyone, all 3 attorneys on the staff do a little bit of everything. We're not compartmentalized, but we all have our strengths. And so we try to play to those strengths. Vicki Fielmeyer has a long history of private practice and real estate law and development work. And so she handles most of those items for the city. But again, I handle some, Jane handles some. And in the back, the support staff, I love having this laser thing. We've got Becky Ripke is our legal technician. She's also kind of the receptionist for the office. She does the processing of all of our criminal prosecutions, keeps track of all of that. Jill Grimsley is, her title is administrative assistant, but she's far beyond that. She really is kind of the administrator of the office on the day-to-day basis, and kind of keeps track of everything, keeps everything rolling, and consults with me often. And so she's sort of my right-hand person for administrative purposes. Ann Lelis is our paralegal and had worked at a large litigation firm in Chicago, and then had a baby and wanted to come back to Iowa, where she was close to family here and not too far away. And so anyway, we're very glad to get her a few years ago. So really, we're kind of Jill and Becky have been here a long time. And, I've been with the city now 6 years. And other than that, everyone's about 2 or 3 years. So it's about half our staff is pretty new. What we do, we advise the city council, represent the city in all sorts of legal matters and litigation matters, draft and review ordinances and contracts and other legal documents, litigate, assist and coordinate with outside counsel in litigation matters. That means anytime ICAP is providing an attorney for us, if we're being sued over something, I end up coordinating with those outside counsel on just about everything they do. They need to talk to employees. We arrange that. I always review their filings, and if they write a brief or even the response that's filed to the litigation, I have input on that, and so I coordinate with them constantly. Here's just a kind of an overview, and our numbers on pages 220 and 221 of your book, but I thought it'd be nice to have a pie chart to kind of show you where our funding sources are. And obviously the largest amount is the general fund. The rest we get mostly from other departments, though we do get some money from fees and fines that people pay. And our budget allocation, by far, we have a pretty simple budget in the legal department because most of it's staff, and that's personal services. And contractual, commodities are things that we, are paper and pens, and then internal services that every department's required to help pay for. So, if you want to take a look at page 220, just a couple notes that I have. Personal services is up 5.8%. That's a little higher than you would normally imagine. That part of the reason for that is that Jane Chang has gone from being an assistant city attorney 1 to being assistant city attorney 2. We have 2 different classifications. That was a change that was made a few years ago. We just used to have 1 classification for assistant city attorneys. We sort of had a history of being the training ground for other city attorneys' offices, that people would come in, young people fresh out of law school, work for the city for 2 or 3 years, and then go off to Des Moines or go off to Davenport or go off to somewhere else and become an assistant city attorney at a larger community. So we decided we need an incentive for people to stay, as well as way to reward people coming in with more experience. And so everyone comes in as an assistant city attorney 1, but they can progress to a 2, and Jane's at that point that she's met all of the qualifications for that, so she moved up to a 2, so that's a little bit higher. The contractual has gone up a bit, and that's there's a couple new things there. One is we have a new conference that we're going to now. It's the IMLA, which is the International Municipal Lawyers Association, which is our and there's a logo up on the screen, but that's the Municipal Attorneys Association nationally. And reason it's international is because there are people from Canada in the group too. And anyway, they have 2 big conferences a year. We usually send 1 person to each of those, and occasionally we might send 2, but it's, if there are enough different tracks going on that I think it might be good to have 2 people there. But generally we'll send 1 person to one in the spring and 1 to the fall, and we kind of all rotate through those. But IMLA started a new conference, which is called the University Cities Conference. We attended the first one this past summer, and it was in Columbia, Missouri. So 2 of us went. Jane and I both went, and it was a good conference, and I think it's going to get better as they sort of figure out how to focus on things. But again, it's a gathering of city attorneys from university towns like Ames. So so we added some money in the budget to cover that. Our Westlaw contract. Westlaw is the research online research software that we use Westlaw is the big company that West Publishing that has published all the legal books forever in the United States. And their online service Westlaw has gone through an upgrade, and it's really pretty amazing. We had a gentleman come in and give us a presentation, showed us how it worked, and we gave him some examples, and he ran them for us. And so in a year or 2, everyone will be moved to the new system. And when that happens, it will be pricier than if we move now. And we're also able to lock in a 5-year contract. And again, it's more money, but we also have it for 5 years, and it will only go up 1% per year. Whereas if we had waited until we were forced to go onto this new version of Westlaw, it would have been a lot more money, and then we would have been subject to 3% increases. So over the 5-year period, we're going to save money by being on that, but the initial cost is more. So anyway, that bumped up the contractual services a bit for this year. And other than that, our budget's really pretty much the same year to year, and the work stays the same. It's always new issues and different issues, and sometimes the same things over and over again. But we're very busy. We're always balancing speed and accuracy, and we hope to achieve both. But there's just a lot going on all the time, and there's never a slow period for us. I have people ask me all the time, when's your slow time of the year? And I always say, there isn't one. Different things, different times of the year, but there are always things going on. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Mark?
Mark, on the number of legal matters, 17-18, we're at 516. And then in 1920, we're at 444. Can you give us a sense of why the decline?
And I do not believe it's an actual decline in the number of the work that we're doing. I will say that as time has gone on, we have done, there are fewer things that we feel the need to open a new matter. And the numbers that we track here are in our ProLaw system, which is our software that tracks all our legal matters, keeps track of this for us. So we get the numbers out of there. But, there are things that come in that are, and I was talking to my staff when, I saw these numbers and I was trying to sort of figure that out. And, and all of us had examples of things where, something came in and we dealt with it very quickly, and we didn't we didn't log it into the system, have our support staff log it into the system as a new matter, open it up, because it was just a very simple thing to deal with. And so I think we've just sort of seen a shift over, since in the little over 2 years now that I've been the city attorney, that we haven't been documenting every single thing that comes in the door. And I don't believe there's a need for that. Now, there are a lot of things we document, and sometimes we talk about them at staff meetings, or sometimes I just say, yeah, I think we need to put that in the database because that's something that might come up again. And so we want to be able to, go back and find that. But there are a lot of little things that come in and that we're involved in, or, Jane gave me the example the other day that she was, the work she's been doing on the new personnel policies and things. Well, she hasn't opened a document on that. She's on the committee that's working on that. She gets the documents are on the T drive. She goes in and makes comments, or they've exchanged things by email. So those things wouldn't appear in our pro law.
And so obviously we're going to defer to you as far as what constitutes a legal matter, and certainly they would vary from little things to large matters. So we recognize that we're not comparing apples with apples. The only thing I would say is that in order for this to be a meaningful comparison, ideally your group would decide what rises to the threshold of that, and that way we can have numbers that are meaningful to compare year to year.
I would say if the numbers change drastically next year, then we had to put some serious thought into it. My guess is we're kind of at the status quo now, where we've sort of hit on what things we're going to open new matters on. And there was a time that everything got logged in as a new matter. I mean, a question from somebody in a hallway, a brief conversation, which, trust me, happens to me all the time. And then go back and it would be logged in as a new matter and put in. And so, we've stopped doing that. I mean, because if it's something really significant that gets discussed in a hallway, it's not a simple matter, then it's going to be, well, send me an email and then we'll log it in and then we'll assign it to an attorney.
The other thing, so number of documents created or reviewed, that also was a pretty major shift. Similar comment there that you're just treating documents differently, went from 13,728 to 8624. Pretty big difference.
Yeah. And the only explanation I have for that is what I've already given. It's, there's some documents that, we're working on with other departments. And so we're doing it on the T drive. So we're not creating the document.
I see.
That seemed like a big jump to me when I saw it too. And other than what I've already said, I don't really have more of an explanation for that. But I think we'll kind of wait to see next year where we're at on that. And we'll probably even do maybe a quarterly review of that just to see where we're at and try to pin that down, to see if that's really a big shift, or again, that's just a factor of not logging in as many things that we used to.
And then remind me maybe it's on 220, when we have to bring in outside legal counsel. So there have been some years where that was a pretty heavy lift for us because we were down an attorney. Could you remind me what line item that would be in? Would that be under contractual?
Yes.
Yeah, it's under contractual.
But
Yeah.
sometimes it's charged to departments.
So
sometimes direct.
So sometimes it'll be charged directly to departments. If it's an electric utility,
right.
it wouldn't necessarily be charged to the legal itself.
Right. So I assume that, but I
It goes
mean,
to the program.
for things like when we were down an attorney,
Well, that's different.
then that would be reflected in contractual. So the reason I asked that is I thought it was being contractual, and we've got a pretty steady increase. So I know that we've got the Westlaw component, but we're fully staffed.
Yeah.
And I know we had some pretty enormous legal bills. I don't know if you guys remember this when Jane, we didn't have Jane at the time. And so we had basically a full-time attorney here. So it would seem like we would be able to experience a decline in contractual if we're fully staffed.
Yeah. We have, I believe it's $23,000 in the budget for contractual, for outside counsel. Now, bear in mind, when ICAP provides us with a counsel, that's part of the premiums we pay ICAP, so it's not paying those people. But there is need every now and then for us to consult with outside counsel, go to outside counsel. Sometimes it's charged, like we have a matter going with electric where, they're paying for the attorney. But there are times that we call people too. And that's, I like to describe it like a doctor, we're all generalists, right? The three of us. And we all have our areas of expertise, but we're all generalists. And it's like going to your family doctor. And sometimes you need a heart specialist, or sometimes you need a lung specialist, or, a GI doctor. It's like sometimes we just have to have that availability. And I haven't spent very much money on the outside counsel. It's just the money is there, and it might be something that could be moved down. But for now it's set like at $23,000 around there. But just for consulting with outside counsel. One thing we've done, we had a really complex bankruptcy matter last year with the Dulles bankruptcy, and where we were being ordered by the trustee to repay all of the money that Dulles had paid us for electric bills. And it was just sort of immediately, this is beyond us. I mean, bankruptcy law is very, very specific. I mean, we file the claims in bankruptcy. We know how to do that. But, someone's filing bankruptcy, they owe the city for electric water bills. We can file those claims. We know how to do that. But get into this where you have to really know bankruptcy law, and we just don't. So we hired a bankruptcy law lawyer to represent the city on that.
So, and I agree with that. I apologize. And maybe we could do this off the meeting, but if you could just land this one plane for me, the contractual services go from 45,000, 18-19, and then now we're looking at 80,000. I apologize, I'm looking at the wrong line. That's commodities. The contractual, no, that's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
45,000 to 80,000, and yet we're fully staffed. So even if we assume the role of consulting attorneys as a constant, it seemed like since we're fully staffed.
Wasn't that the Westlaw edition? It was in that category too, or no?
No, assuming the Westlaw. So we had a bump up for Westlaw. I mean, and maybe I can take the answer offline.
Are you relying on the 45,000 the prior year? Is that why you think it's a big jump?
Yes.
Well, we'll have to check. That might be an aberration that year. We'll have to see what happened in
They might have had
17,
it.
18.
They might have had it budgeted in that year and then ended up not using it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
that's
that might
why
have
the
been a low year.
45,000 was low after Jane came on. I don't remember, but I think the 73 to the 80 was when we weren't budgeting that higher level of outside attorney service any longer. I think we had budgeted higher probably for 18,
Well,
19.
they're projecting
and 17,
78,000 this year.
Well, we had two cases. One, we had the water treatment plant where you had to get outside counsel.
Right.
Jeff Stone, and council approved a change order to increase the fees because the point is that was a very specialized, and you need someone to really know what they were talking about.
The water treatment plant paid for that. So I just want to be clear.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
But I
there's
think
been- there's
it's
been
prudent
several-
for us to put some money in there for specialized advice to the city attorney's office that we can have. We don't have to go to the city council and ask for a change in the budget or something, get your approval. Mark will not spend it if he doesn't believe it's needed. But sometimes we have to have rapid response and get answers. And as you know, we can't call up an attorney and they just give us free advice. The clock starts running. So Mark understands that, and he's very prudent in his expenditure of funds. So
Well, in the closed session we had last week, that was regarding the utility board. That guy's got decades of experience
Right.
regarding that. So we need people to help us protect our interests.
And Hopkins and Hebner law firm in Des Moines, which gets assigned to us by ICAP a lot for civil rights complaints or other employment law.
employment law, we call a lot.
Yeah, we will call them.
This is before our suit or ICAP comes in. We will ask for advice.
Right.
So employment law is specialized. We want to get some information. Mark will be able to call up somebody and give us good advice.
Yeah.
So we don't get in to do anything that will subject us to any liability.
Because they are true experts in the employment law. And sometimes it's like, I could go this way, I could go that way. I just need to talk it through with an attorney who does this for a living day in and day out.
I'm good. I appreciate you fielding my questions. I don't want to
Yeah,
take
sure
more time
thing.
on that. Thank you.
So, Tim, we've got it here. So 17, 18, we actually spent 117,705 in contractual. And then we dropped the budgeted, we adopted for 18, 19, which you were asking about at 40 something, it's 68. And Nancy mentioned we probably had 20 some in there for outside the,
That we did.
some years we don't
use.
use that, some years
We
use
do.
twice that amount. You know,
Right.
like Mark mentioned, depending on if you have something like a bankruptcy case that comes up. So that 17, 18 would reflect that year. We only spent 607 in personnel, where I think you had the most of the year, I believe, with one less attorney.
Okay.
And, you know, we essentially doubled what we spent in contractual that year.
How much is the Westlaw going up? You know,
I looked that up earlier. Nancy, do you remember how much the Westlaw went up?
Increase was, I think it was maybe $5,000 or $6,000.
well, not that much. But
I think the total increase in contractual was 7,000 and it accounted for quite a bit of it. And then the other was the addition of the new conference.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Mark. Appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Human resources. I think. They make a move. Team HR is coming, right?
Hey there. I'm excited to talk to you about human resources. We've had a really exciting year. The first exciting bit of information is on the very next slide. Right? Yes. The
Winners?
human resources team is fully staffed for the first time in about 5 years. This is a huge accomplishment, and I'm really excited that this is our team. This is a really great team. We're dressed in our holiday finest here, and I have a couple of people here who will be helping present some of the information. Might be hard to recognize them because Krista Hammer is not wearing her antlers today, and Andrea is not wearing her cat sweatshirt, but they'll come up and introduce themselves when it's their turn to speak. So we're really excited. One of the new positions that we were able to add is an increase to a full-time position. Had been previously budgeted at a 0.75 position and had been vacant for a couple of years. So we're really excited to have full-time staff. So excellence through people, or ETP as we call it, serves as the guide for all we do in human resources. And this is from recruitment and promotion to evaluations and even discipline of employees. ETP covers the employee or the organization's values and culture and has two goals at its core. And that is to provide exceptional service at the best price and to provide an enjoyable and stimulating work environment. So much of what HR does speaks to those two goals in particular. So one of the ways we are seeking to provide excellent service is to improve efficiency across HR processes. An HR system can help us streamline processes and improve data management, and it helps employees have greater access to information. So in this next fiscal year, we are excited to be seeking proposals for a human resources information system. And hopefully we will get some really good responses and we will be able to explore some full suite options that will have everything from the employee data to employee time cards, scheduling, all of the things that make things run more smoothly. And we're even excited about the potential for a learning management system that would help people manage their education from start to finish with their employment. And to even enroll in benefits, have an employee self-service module. So we're really excited about what we might be seeing. And I hope to have something really exciting to present next year once we've gotten through an implementation process. Some of the things that we've focused on is recruitments. That's a big focus of HR every year. In this current fiscal year, in the last fiscal year, we launched 180 recruitments. That does include the temporary positions that you think of in the summertime, things like that. But that's a lot of positions to be advertising and to go through a recruitment process. As of today, or yesterday, we had 111 recruitments launched. And again, that includes the temporary positions. But I think we're on target to at least hit that 180 mark that we hit last year. Last year, we received 3,408 applications, and that's for every open position that we advertised, including those temporary positions. So far this year, we're at 2,184. So I think we're on target to at least hit that 3,408. And what this tells us is that even though this is a really tight labor market with low unemployment, we are still getting interest in our positions. Some of our positions are struggling, but overall, we're getting a lot of interest in our positions, and that's a really good thing. So that says that City of Ames is being known as a good place to work. People want to come and work here, so we're doing a lot of good things.
So you have to go through a qualification process, right? What's the caliber and quality of the applicants? You can a lot of people apply, but maybe they're not qualified. Are you finding that the caliber and expertise of the applicants is high?
So what we're finding is that we're able to fill positions, and that's good. We have heard just anecdotally from different departments that, we're not getting as many qualified candidates as we have in the past, but we are still able to fill the positions. We've had just a handful of positions that we would call failed recruitments, where we'd have to go out again. But for the most part, the vast majority of positions we are able to fill. And for those civil service positions, we are able to create lists with multiple names on them.
Great, thank you.
You have a figure about the diversity of applicants on page 223 there.
Yep.
How do you measure that? Like, I assume you can't ask on the application, do you consider yourself so how do you gauge that? Or how do you gauge based on an application, if a person is of a diverse background or a woman or man?
So we do ask, and that information is held confidential, so only HR staff is allowed to see it.
Okay.
And so it comes in a special report. It's part of our EEO data. And so we do ask. It's not a required, no one's required to answer the question, but we do ask. And it's race, ethnicity, and gender and veteran status that we do ask.
Just seems like such a stable number too. That's pretty amazing that it hasn't changed.
It does stay pretty stable. And we know that we have a lot of opportunity to increase those numbers. And so I'll be talking about that in a couple of slides here. So I think we have some plans to make those numbers even better, but we have asked for many years, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, interesting.
On the other hand, I mean, the percentages stayed stable, but we've increased the number of applications, right? So the number of diverse applicants has increased simply because 14% of 3,200 is higher than 14% of 2,200.
Right. And
So-
it is staying pretty stable percentage-wise.
What accounts for that increase in the applications? Even though our recruitments are up, but they aren't up enough, it would seem, to account for 1,000 more applicants between 2017 and 2019. So is there something I'm missing there? Are we attracting more people, or?
So I think it's where we're advertising. Many of the positions that we're advertising currently are truly nationwide searches. And so if we're pushing out beyond our website, beyond Iowa State, we will just attract more applicants. for those positions. And we're making a concerted effort to cast a really wide net for all of the positions where we could attract a lot of different candidates. And so we're really making an effort to do that.
Great.
Another huge portion of the work that we do in human resources is around employee training opportunities. We have the Employee Development Center, or EDC. We offer a number of classes, and these are different types of classes. It's a mix of hard skills training, like Word and Excel training, and soft skills training. So this is communication skills, customer service training, things like that. And this is in addition to departmental training that would teach the technical skills required to do a particular job. And so in this last year, we offered 79 different classes in our EDC, and that works out to about 214 hours of training. We also have power hours, and these are classes devoted to supervisors, our formal leaders in the organization. We offered 14 classes over the last year, which is 24 hours of training. Each of those classes are 2 hours. We call them required, and these are specific leadership training. So we have one coming up in a couple of weeks, reminding supervisors how to conduct a performance evaluation. It's things like that. So we calculated the number of employees that attend these employee development classes. So in addition to it's the 79 classes, 214 hours of training, we have 1,079 employees that attended this training. Wow. And so we don't have that many full-time employees. So some of these are repeat customers, which is a really good thing as well. So that tells us that the quality of training that we're offering is good. People want to take more than one class. And so this is a good thing that is enriching the employee experience, and we're going to keep adding classes and keep offering different types of classes.
Are those classes offered after hours or just during the normal workday, or how does that happen?
It's a mix, honestly. So we offer the majority of classes during the standard workday, but since we have so many people who work different shifts, we'll offer some early in the morning, we'll offer some evenings. We want to make the classes accessible for the employees. So a big focus this last year has been on diversity and inclusion. And this has been a really exciting thing for me to be a part of. I'm just one part of this. We have a whole team. In the last year, we've created a diversity and inclusion team. We have 9 members, and these are volunteers from across the organization. A lot of different departments are represented. We've met 6 times, and we've had a retreat. Our focus is inward. And so we're looking inside the organization. We're looking at policies. We're looking at our recruitment efforts. We're looking at training opportunities. This is a picture of the group as we had a retreat last month. It was a full day retreat where we spent half the day learning about diversity and inclusion topics, getting some good training from an outside consultant. And then we spent the second half of the day really building up our team. And so we're looking forward to the next several months where we start digging into employment policies, we start looking into our recruitment practices, and making some recommendations to city management. This is a really exciting time. We're just at the beginning, and so we're just learning about all of the opportunity that we have. We know there's a lot of opportunity. We know we have room for improvement in the ways we recruit, in some of our internal policies. And we're just really excited about learning what we can do and what really positive changes we can make.
So of the 9 members on that team, how many represent diverse populations?
It depends on how you define diverse population. So that's a really key thing. So.
let's say not women, because I'm seeing a lot of slides that have like 5 women and 1 man, or 6 women and 1 man. So what about people of color or other underrepresented groups?
Okay, so that's a great question. Underrepresented group in that team, I would say we have 3 out of the 9 that are from underrepresented groups. And Everyone else on the team is really interested in recognizing all marginalized people and creating policies and practices that bring everybody forward. In the last 2 years, we've looked at different training opportunities that we've offered that are specifically related to diversity and inclusion. And these are the classes that have been offered. These classes have been offered multiple times, so we've had multiple touch points with employees over the last couple of years, but these are the different categories. So it's cultural awareness, LGBTQ in the workplace, civility in the workplace, emotional intelligence, a mental health overview, respect, rights, and responsibility. That is an annual mandatory training that we do for all employees, especially all new employees, that teaches the basics about discrimination, the basics about how we should be treating each other, and things like that. And then we always have an employment law refresher for our supervisory group, and that happens on an annual basis as well. And in the last year, we have successfully negotiated 2 union contracts with 2 of our labor groups. And I always like to talk about that because it's a significant piece of our work, and it represents a significant portion of our employees. So I'll move on to risk management.
Can I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
The $70,000 that's added to the operating budget to fund the ongoing cost, where is that entered in your budget? I don't see a $70,000 bump up anywhere. I was just curious.
It's largely in the contractual services, and it was offset by removing some of the costs from things we're already paying for.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So in the risk management section, some of the significant risk management activities are the management of property insurance, liability insurance, and claim settlement. We do have a self-insured workers' compensation program, and so it's managing those claims as well as a pretty robust safety program. And our risk manager personally gets involved in each of these things here. And then when we look at the expenses, the significant expenses are in the property premiums and the liability premiums. And so the property premiums, that's where a big jump happened in this last year, and we're projecting for the next year. And that's largely due to weather claims outside of Iowa, but around the United States. And when those big weather events like floods and fires happen, the rates for everybody go up. And so that's what we're experiencing here, and that's the biggest thing to take note of here. Some of the things that the risk manager is working on is he's been working really hard to establish a citywide safety team. And so over the last year, he and a couple of other people in the organization have started meeting to talk about the key topics for what we should be addressing from a safety perspective. And then they'll be working to put together a team in the next several months. And then that team will be providing training, providing safety talks, checking in with different departments across the organization.
Could you go back one slide, please?
Sure.
So the property premiums, does that include property insurance is shown in the budget at 746. Does auto get thrown into that, or how does that? Just there seems to be a difference in the, or maybe you got things that are added into it. I just don't see. That's on page 240, line 2, property insurance recommended 2021 is 746, and you have 823 up there.
Okay. So let me follow up on that one. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I will double check on that one and get back to you for sure.
Because actually you have 1920 adjusted is shown as 667 and you have 716. So I'll just check those figures.
Sure.
This 675, 951 is correct. So there's those two numbers seem to be
Okay.
off.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I'll check
Hey,
on it.
Brian.
So there's a couple things going on there that may answer this. We're self-insured for property damage on vehicles, with the exception of transit buses. So transit buses are covered under our property insurance. Liability encompasses a variety of components, including auto liability. So I'm not sure if that helps explain the discrepancy. I think we may be listing these out a little bit differently than
Under if you take liability insurance, liability claims, and auto insurance, that's 520. So it's still, that falls short of the 579 also. Anyway, it's just a matter of just checking the numbers and seeing if there's either the slide maybe it's not correct or the
Okay.
budget seems different. Pardon me?
We'll have to
Yeah.
verify. It has to reconcile with the budget. So
Yep.
we'll have to get the chart fixed.
Thank you.
Good catch.
Two of the other items that we'll be working on from a risk management perspective is taking our excess workers' compensation coverage and our workers' compensation third-party administration out to market. It's been several years since that has happened, and so it's the right time to do that, and we'll be taking that on in the next fiscal year. So now we'll move on to health insurance management, and Krista will come and chat about that.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to reference some things that are from page 242 to 244 for you. Can you hear me now?
You talk about it.
Okay. So to keep in spirit of supporting our ETP values, I'm going to focus on with the health insurance part of this program for continuous improvement in customer-driven as well as fiscal stewardship. As you can see with our service objective here, our objective is to try to keep yearly our health insurance rates below 10% and any increases. And you can see from the last 3 years, including this current year that we're in, we've definitely kept with that goal in mind. Even for the projection for 2021 for the fiscal year, we're still only increasing rates by 3.9%. So that is definitely a good thing to focus on. And this graph just shows the current year, 2 prior years, and then as well as the projection that we're trying to do for the next year's budget.
So, excuse me, can you just go at page 242? So we have, it shows total expenditures are up 9.1%. So is there a line that we should look at to see the 3.9%? Understand categorically how.
These are the rates we're going to charge our departments to generate money. What we're doing, actually, are we dipping into the balance to pay for this?
This is their expenditure.
Yeah, this is the
page.
expenditure page for if you want to look at how insurance is doing overall, which is what we use to set the rate, that's back in the fund sheet on 306. So this shows health insurance management, which breaks out claims and all those things. And actually, it does match up exactly to that. But
The revenues would be.
yeah, the revenues are not here.
So
That's
on-
what's up.
So on 306.
Yeah, it's not the expenditures that are up 9%. It's the revenues, the rate we charge departments.
Rates for charge departments to finance everything.
So the expenses are up
Gotcha.
quite a bit more than the.
Very good. Thank you.
But you notice we're going to dip into the fund $259,000. So it's a planned drawdown. But we can finance all the obligations in that fund by charging departments 3.9% in revenue.
Okay.
They pay their insurance company, and their insurance company is this fund.
Okay. All right. Good. Thanks.
Okay. Oops. There we go. To support some of these extra costs that we are recouping with the 3.9% increase in our rates that we're going to be charging, we're making some changes to our medical plans. And this is to help be a little bit more consistent across the board. We have 3 medical plans. One is an HMO product, one is a PPO product, and one is similar to a PPO product. It's an older device plan that's closed right now. We've still got some members in it. But with these changes that we are going to make for all preventive services, there will be 100% coverage for any member in our insurance plans. So there will be no out-of-pocket expenses or cost share for all the members. So that's a great advantage for our members, regardless of what plan they're going to be in. And then also, along with that change comes that their cost shares for anything that they would pay out of pocket will go to an out-of-pocket maximum, which is set annually. And so once they would reach that, they wouldn't have any more expenses if they reach their out-of-pocket max. Also, along with that, the coinsurance paid for members who are going for infertility treatments, with that expense that they would pay for that program would also go to their out-of-pocket maximum. We also have had some changes that we're going to make that will allow some more flexibility for incremental situations. One of those is specifically with our tiers for our drug program. As many of you may recall, that is our highest expense, which I'll go over in a few minutes with the next chart that I'll go over. But that will help us kind of regroup some coverage for that. We're going to do incremental steps of changing the tiers that we have split out for the types of drugs that are covered by our plan, and some of the tiers will increase based on the drug cost increases. So this maybe, Mayor, this might help you a little bit. This is a kind of a picture to show the healthcare expenditure part. That's the only picture that I have for you. But one thing I wanted to focus on is the health administration piece is all the internal stuff that we do in the HR department, plus the contractual agreement that we have with our consultant Gallagher. So it's only 1% of this entire pie, which I think we need to give kudos to our entire organization for keeping that expenditure very low. And as you can see, the 61, the 21, and the 5 dental. So, yep, 5%. I think that comes out to about 87%, if I remember right. But those are all the claims. So as you can see, our biggest claim obviously is medical. Pharmacy is our second biggest, and it will continue to probably grow with the huge costs that a lot of medications are out there. But one of those I wanted to point out in excess insurance, if nobody's familiar with that is, it's excess or stop loss insurance. And the city has set a certain level, which is any claims that go above 125 for an individual member on our plans. And then we have anything that goes above 120% overall in the estimated claims that we have for a year. So those are combined. And we just had a meeting with Walmart yesterday, and they're actually coming together and saying, you have a huge experience with this. Overall, their book of business with the city and government agencies that they have a huge experience with this. So they're reevaluating that. And that's why you see a huge increase on that line in particular. It's only about $80,000 in our whole entire budget, but that one line looks like it's kind of out of line a little bit at 35% increase. But it's still only 5% of our total health expenditures.
So do you go to market every year and get to evaluate the excess insurance and other insurance, or is that something that you have a good track record with the company and you just want to kind of stay with one company? Or
Yeah, we actually have not. We've stayed with Wellmark. Wellmark has a provider for us underneath their contractual agreement. But that is one thing that Gallagher is actually going to help us look at for this upcoming years to see if there's some better prices out there.
So if I could summarize, then we pay out of pocket for health administration, medical claims, dental claims, and pharmacy claims. We're basically self-insured. Is that correct? On those lines?
Yes. Actually, I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
On page 242, the first 4 lines health administration, and then there's 3 medical, dental, and pharmacy claims. So essentially, to keep our costs down, we're self-insured. We pay that out of our pocket. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Which
Yep.
is many large employers do that. I mean, they just to be self-insured.
Yep. Absolutely.
And the
Sorry, I
excess-
thought you had said fully insured for a second.
No, yeah. And then the excess insurance, which pales in comparison to all the other claims, is basically to stop at 125,000 per individual,
That's correct.
or 120% over what you have budgeted for
For
the
all
year.
claims together.
Thank you.
Yep.
So it may be a misnomer to say we're self-insured. We're not totally self-insured.
That's
We have
true. Yeah, true.
Catastrophic loss. We're protecting the citizens, and either
Right.
utility rates or their general fund property tax, just in case we have a catastrophic
Right.
loss. So we buy assurance over that time, over a certain amount.
I'm just familiar with a couple of larger employers that they do exactly the same thing. They pay up to a certain point, and then after that, they carry insurance, so they don't just go totally into the red seriously for a big loss. It could be $1 million or more for one claim.
Yep. Absolutely.
And did I understand you correctly that basically because the stop loss, that we've been managing things well with the stop loss, that's why the stop loss rates were raised? I know what you said?
We've been managing them well.
Yes.
However, we have had quite a larger number.
We've been drawing against that. insurance.
Correct.
I see.
Yes.
That makes sense.
And even into 2021, there's a lot of carryover from 1920 for those claimants to carry over some expenditures into 2021 too. They're going to be like your lifetime illnesses, your temporary illnesses that are those catastrophic personal illnesses. So, it depends on when the treatment will end for some of the individuals, but sometimes it could be a lifelong situation.
Thanks.
Yep. And
So,
I'm sorry.
okay, so maybe this is a question you can answer and maybe it's not. I noticed under risk management that we have multiple units that have gone for over 800 days without a lost time injury. How does that low number of lost time injuries figure into our insurance rates or our ability to insure?
It's a separate thing.
Okay.
And so what these slides are talking about are specifically our health insurance program, not our workers' compensation program.
Okay.
So if someone gets injured at work, anything that would cause a lost time incident,
Then
that
it's
would
workers'
fall under
comp.
workers' compensation. Mhm.
If you didn't have any more questions for me about the health insurance piece, I'm going to pass it to my cohort for the health promotions piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Andrea Cardenas. I'm the city's health promotion coordinator, and slide. I manage the wellness programs for City of Ames employees. This is all funded under the health insurance fund. So when you're looking at the budget on page 242, there's one line that shows you the expenditures for the planned expenses for the health promotion program. So that's where it fits into the total health insurance fund. Sorry. And we offer a variety of programs and services, and they vary from length, but also on the types of health conditions and things that they cover. Everything from nutrition, physical fitness, mental well-being, healthy habits, disease prevention. Something that's really important is also trying to create an environment and a culture that really supports healthy behavior change over time. So one of the philosophies of our health promotion program is meeting people where they're at and helping them improve their health habits gradually so that they can have, build something that's a habit that's lifelong health. And one way that we do that as far as meeting people where they're at is also literally meeting people where they're at by taking services out to the different locations. As you well know, we have 24-hour operations. We have employees that work all different types of occupations within the organization. Sometimes I feel like instead of working with one company, I'm working with 12 different companies because of some of the diversity of all the things that our employees do. And so in order to make it more accessible and so that people can participate, we take those services out. So one example of that are flu shots. Every year in the fall, we take flu shots out to different locations throughout the organization. What we've seen by this is that we have significantly higher rates of flu shot vaccination than what you see for the general population. So when looking at our flu vaccination rates, we were at 68% for this last fall. I have those numbers, that's current through December. 68% of employees that are eligible received a flu vaccination through our program. So to put that into perspective, the state of Iowa through the 31st of January was 38.5%, and Story County was 37.3%. And those numbers are just from health promotion program. They don't actually include what might have gone against our health insurance. And so I'm really proud of being able to achieve this level. And a lot of that is making it convenient. You know, a significant barrier for people to take care of themselves is you know, how convenient something is, and especially something like a flu shot where it's going to hurt. You might be sore for a little while, you know, to try to make it easier for people to do that, because I know it's good for their health. That's one of the reasons why we take those services out to the departments. I also spend a lot of time as part of my role, but also we're collaborating with local and state organizations for wellness. So I'm a board member with Healthiest Ames. Through Healthiest Ames, we have formed the Ames Worksite Wellbeing Collaborative. That's a group of Ames employers that meets every other month and focuses on things affecting the well-being of employees across the city. One thing that's really been a hot topic is mental health. You know, what do you do as an employer? What are best practices? How can we help our employees so that, you know, they feel better and are getting, you know, access to adequate services? And so through the Iowa Healthy State Initiative, they've launched something called Make It Okay Iowa. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this initiative, but it's something that I'm supposed to go to the next slide. Maybe the battery died. Oh.
Trying to advance the slide.
Yeah, can you advance the slide? Okay. Thank you. So through the Iowa Healthy State Initiative, they have something rolling out statewide called Make It Okay Iowa. What this is a community campaign that's focused on reducing the stigma of mental illness throughout the state of Iowa. They also just recently launched an employer toolkit, and so employers can be part of this program, and then also, you know, focusing on their employees as far as helping people understand what mental illness is, learn what to say, what not to say when someone opens up. You know, a significant barrier to receiving mental health access to mental health care services is the stigma. In the state of Iowa, 1 in 5 Iowans will expect to have a mental illness throughout their lifetime. Something that's really stuck out to me is that on average, it takes people 10 years to seek treatment. 10 years is a long time to live with an illness and not only through our organization, but also throughout the community. On those lines, we also have offered some programs and services. I know Bethany mentioned the Intro to Mental Health. What that is a class that employees can take through our EDC program and learn about what different mental illnesses are. Something that really stuck out to me sitting through through those classes is that employees are looking at it from not only their own well-being, but also, you know, what are some of the things I should be looking for when I'm working with community members? How can I approach a community member with respect and compassion if they're exhibiting symptoms of some of these illnesses? And so really helps people not only with their own well-being, but also, you know, something that they can take out into the community and provide good customer service. In addition to that, we're also next month having a first mental health first aid class. That's what it sounds like. It's how to respond in a mental health emergency. So we have employees throughout the organization that will be doing that training and to be able to help their coworkers. On the flip side of identifying and treating mental illness, we also want to build resilience and stress management among our employee population. So we do a lot of programs and services that address this, and some of that is also through, you know, regular physical activity, good nutrition, taking care of yourself, getting good sleep, but also things like learning different techniques for stress management. I teach an intro to mindfulness class. And so employees from all over the organization take this class, learn how to apply different mindfulness techniques and really kind of experiment and see what works for them. Employees identify that this helps them be better leaders. You know, if you're paying attention in the present moment, you're a better listener. You make fewer mistakes. You're less likely to have an accident. So those are all really good things for employees to be learning how to do that and finding ways to manage not only their own stress, but be a better version of themselves at work. And lastly, we have a project called the Charging Station, which along the lines of learning stress reduction techniques, we created a kit that you could actually take out to the departments. They can check it out. And it has instructions and information about different types of stress management and relaxation techniques, talks about how to do it, has all the materials for it, why it works, how it works, and then people have takeaway materials they can take if they want to continue that. And so it just gives people an opportunity to really experiment and see what works for them and add something else that can help them manage their stress. You know, looking at some of our data from our health claims, something that really stuck out to me was when we were reviewing data from 2019 for that fiscal year, we actually saw a 38% increase in claims for mental health conditions. In some ways, that's great. You know, if people are seeking those services and they're getting the treatment that they need, that's wonderful. It also indicates that there's just a rise of those kind of conditions amongst our communities. And so it's really important, if not more than ever, that we make it okay for people to talk about it, make it okay for people to seek help. So that's all that I had to share with you guys today. Do you guys have any questions?
So in this make it okay, is it primarily just raising awareness versus actually helping people with mental health, or how?
Yes. Yeah. So the idea is that people have a hard time opening up and even just talking about it, like maybe not wanting to tell their supervisor if they have to take a sick day, not feeling comfortable being able to talk about any, you know, that health condition. Also, like what not to say and what to say if somebody opens up to you. Sometimes people say things that they think are helpful, but really aren't helpful. And that makes people that have mental illnesses less likely to reach out for help. That contributes to, you know, those 10 years delay in seeking services.
Yeah, how we handle employees, though, you want to talk about employee assistance program and maybe our insurance policy, so we can provide treatment and assistance, right?
Right. Yeah. So also another element of the Make It Okay campaign is to direct people to the appropriate resources. So that would include our employee assistance program. That would include, you know, going to your provider. It's not so that employees are filling in as a therapist or a counselor. It's so that people are able to get access to the resources that they need.
Do you have an EAP for full-time only or part-time as well?
It's for all benefits eligible employees.
Which are part-time, some are part-time.
Yeah, some of those are part-time.
So you really don't have any kind of data or access to data in terms of what or why there's this market increase. I understand that's partly the awareness
Yeah.
is probably encouraging that people are actually identifying it and trying to get help, you know, early on or when they have issues. But because of HIPAA and other things, you probably don't have any kind of, is it workplace stress? Is it family stress? Is it,
yeah.
you know, what's precipitating it? Not enough, you know, social connections, you know, whatever. But, okay.
I mean, we were able to dig into that data a little bit and look at, you know, what's driving that increase. Is it the cost of those services going up? Is it more people seeking resources? And what we found was there were more people that were getting access to those resources. When we look at that data, we do get some de-identified information, and that's just the types of claims. So the top conditions were anxiety, depression, and stress. As far as the source of the stress, we don't know specifically, but if you look at what the data says as far as in general, like what research indicates, cause of stress could be finances, work, relationships. And then things that would help people deal with that is social connection, like you mentioned, good self-care practices, having good relationships, things like that.
You said I missed the first thing. I caught depression and stress. What was the first thing you said that were causes?
Anxiety, depression, and stress.
You've heard a lot about our ATP program, and it's what makes us special and unique, our organization. Many people have values-driven organizations like we do, and many of them have values like we do. And sometimes they emphasize, many of the organizations, if you look at it, they'll emphasize safety. When you look at the definition of that, they're talking about physical safety. In our organization, we talk about safety. We talk about physical and emotional safety for employees. So we take it very seriously. It's a high priority for us. It's one of our values. Makes us unique.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
One quick question, maybe I'm not sure who this is for. It's been a while since we've had a number about the percentage of our staff that will be retiring. So there was a pretty significant percentage. Do you remember this discussion at some point? It's a pretty high number that would retire projected within the next 10 years. Do you happen to know that?
No, because I'm finding there are a lot of people who are eligible for retirement and they're retiring. Some people are holding back. In other words, you can maybe get a number of when they're eligible for retiring, but some people now, for a lot of reasons, many times it has to do with health care, health insurance, just earning. It's more expensive to live. They're staying on past their eligibility requirement. And so I'm not sure we know exactly when people are retiring. People start talking about it, and then I talk to them later, and they stay on longer, which is good for us. We have, very excellent employees with a lot of knowledge we like to keep. So I'm not sure we can get you the exact time when people retire. We maybe get you a look at when people be eligible, but I'm not sure you can rely on that anymore.
Okay.
But that's why we're trying to, as you want us to do, look to succession planning. So we want to make sure that there's a backup person in many of the positions. That's hard to do in a city, in an organization our size, because there's not always a natural promotional position of which somebody can learn the position to move into. But we try to do as much as possible. And we identify good people who aren't, to give you an idea, who aren't supervisors right now. We get them involved in a lot of our training, on our supervisory training and other training. So we try to encourage people to help give them the skills to move up into other positions to be promoted. There are ways, it's easier maybe for police or fire because they have the certain retirement, and many times they'll go out at a certain age, so we can predict those. And it's usually a wave, and then it'll die down, and we can predict the next wave of fire and police. But there are a lot of professional positions. People are staying on longer than their eligibility dictates.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for what you're doing, especially for the program that you're working on, because I think that we all know it's going to be a fight for workforce in the decades ahead, and providing benefits and, employee care is really going to be critical. So, and boy, it's just, who doesn't know that health insurance premiums keep going up? So my questions are not, why aren't we keeping these costs down? We didn't know it. I was just trying to understand how all the numbers correlate. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank
Okay, we've got several wrap-up items to do tonight, so I'll run through the finance budget here fairly quickly, but feel free to stop me anytime we go along. We always like to start out with economic development. Part of the reason for that is because we talk a lot about the program budget. And a lot of cases, when you look at it, the program also matches up with the department in a division. In most cases, it does. But if you look in our org chart, you won't find anywhere an economic development department, an economic development division, but we certainly have an economic development program, and it's reflected here in the budget. It's made up, we're at page 189, and this group, there's some salaries in here, and it's made up part of my salary, part of the city manager's. It's essentially the lead economic development person for the city, and also the city attorney. So that's just a good example for program. Some of the things we record in here is our pass-through of hotel motel tax to the Ames Convention and Visitors Bureau. We partner, and I have a list of some of our partners up here. The Ames Convention Visitors Bureau, that's pass-through of hotel motel. We also contract with the Ames Economic Development Commission, and they're essentially our lead agency for working both with the expansion of existing businesses and also attracting businesses, not only to Ames, but to the surrounding area. Our portion, of course, is to fund attraction here in Ames. There was a fairly large increase in this budget, and essentially all of it was the TIF rebate pass-through for Barilla. So we have a couple different kinds of TIFs. One is debt, and that's shown in debt service. But when we have pass-through rebates, and right now we have two, Kingland and Barilla being new, those are recorded here in this activity at economic development. So a couple of things we have going on here. This was kind of an interesting one, Smart Ag, a company that originated here in Ames that is working on a driverless tractor, but for a very narrow and important function, the wagons that go along with combines. We worked with them, had everything worked out, and they continued with the project, but they decided not to use public funding. So, we helped move them along. They went ahead on their own, which was terrific. And you might remember in the CIP, we had some bonds to move forward with extending utilities out to the East Industrial area. That's another project we're working on, but you don't see any expenses here. That's a debt one, other than the salaries for Steve and I and the attorney to work on that.
I just want to emphasize, that doesn't mean it's the sum total of your economic development efforts. You could be giving urban revitalization tax abatement, and you could be giving industrial tax abatement. Abatement is not an expenditure that comes through here. It's a deferral of revenue. So it doesn't show up here. You're still giving incentives out. And this one just happens to show up because it's actually passes through our books. If you didn't have this, that would be $669,000 would be tax revenue in. But in this case, you're rebating that back to them. So it shows up at expense. That's why it's here. But it's not the sum total of all of your incentives that you've offered to economic development.
How long does Kingland have and how much does Barilla have left, do you know?
Well, Barilla just started. It's 10 years,
Okay.
And don't quote me on the amount, but the Kingland's moving along pretty rapidly, and they had 10 years or a certain amount, and I believe it's going to be done at least 2 years early. And I don't have the dates on that, but that one's doing well. And we expect Barilla too also. We have minimum assessments agreements with them, so it's built in that we'll get our money back pretty rapidly.
Yep.
But we only pass it through when we receive it.
Go ahead.
So does the line item for economic development city staff include just the city manager, city attorney, and finance director?
It's
Yes.
parts
positions?
of those three positions.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a percentage.
Some percentage of time.
I think it's listed at the top in the description.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that accounted for that entire amount, the 74,000.
Yes.
We contract with EDC. They go out and promote, recruit, but we hold very dear any negotiations for city incentives. That's what we get involved with. And writing up development agreements, the attorney helps us with that. So that's not something we rely on EDC to do. We'll do that in-house.
Right. Yeah, they have no authority, obviously, to act on our behalf. They bring the deals essentially to us, and then we obviously
negotiate.
work them as they go along, but then we negotiate.
And so the EDC staff line or approximate staff line is in the $150,000 expenditure.
That's
right.
correct. Part of it's a shared position, and the other one's the contracted work. Then the other areas are all fall within the finance department, and we'll cover finance administration and budget, and that's the area that Nancy primarily works on. And accounting and reporting, I'll combine those into financial services. We'll cover debt service briefly, purchasing services, information technology, utility customer service, and parking violation collection. I don't have a slide on each one of these, but we'll cover them all briefly. First on financial services, and this starts on page 216, I believe. And this is the traditional finance, accounting, payroll, all those various services, actually, 216. And also finance administration. A couple of the things that were up in this area is in employee training. We have a couple new employees in finance administration. I believe we're doing, well, one is doing some university training, and then we also have a training for new employee. Data costs are up a little bit, and I think you've seen that in a lot of places. You know, for us being very salary heavy, it becomes a little bit more significant. Some of the things we're doing, working on increasing direct deposit. We've provided some incentives for that. We're in the process of implementing an electronic document management system, and that's going to be a real time saver. Right now, we scan all the documents, they put on CD. If you need to look something up, you see it on our system, you go pick it up. Now we'll have the, what has become the more typical drill down system where you can look at an expense, click on it, and move down and see the actual document. So that is getting in place right now. Otherwise, not a lot of changes there. We continue to maintain a AA1 GL bond rating, and that's I mention essentially every time we sell, our bonds have been selling pretty much at the AAA, so we're considered a very good credit.
Brian, can you just comment on, I mean, this saves the city a lot of money.
It does. We get some, there are a couple different things. We're not a big issuer, so, we can't demand a lot of market attention, but, there's a lot of different buyers that, need a certain amount of very highly rated securities, and, they don't come to market all the time. So, a lot of times cities our size doing 10 million, they might only get, 4 or 5 bids. You see ours as sometimes there's 4 or 5, but they'll represent a syndicate of 20 bidders. So we get broad interest in our bids, and that's what drives the prices down. So
would it be safe to say that it saves tens of thousands of dollars a year in interest?
It really depends. Right now, because rates are low, you don't save as much because everything's compressed. And since the Tax Reform Act of 2017 and the state and local tax limitation, that has also driven up the market. So that's narrowed the gap between the less rated securities than the better rated ones. So right now it's not as much of a difference, but it won't stay that way all the time. So long term, you're way better off being more highly rated.
Well, I just think that's important for us to continue to remember that this may just seem like another line in a report, but it could have a profound effect in terms of what taxpayers are paying for interest.
Absolutely.
On their bonds.
Especially when you're looking at big projects that require a referendum that can, it really become significant.
So so on the basis that we're able to indoor aquatic center, other things, I mean,
Yes.
This will help us do more potentially with principal and not to spend quite as much money on interest.
Over 20 years, it's.
The larger, big, longer term projects, yes, it's significant. Library was a good example. We came in under our forecast for that. That was, around $20 million.
Well, it just shows good fiscal planning, thanks to you guys, in terms of what's being done. And I think that we just need to appreciate that, because probably a lot of communities would just give their eye teeth to have that kind of rating.
In the state of Illinois.
Yes, we continue to submit our budget and CAFR documents for peer review through GFOA and receive our certificates of excellence every year. There's a little bit of an increase in printing because now we don't print as many, but we do them all in color. And that was some of the improvements that Nancy put in place last year to reformat this book, which I think we did a few things that we added on this year, but part of it is that additional cost to print. But I think it's well worth it. It makes a nice looking document. When you look at overall, it's not a huge expense. So we've implemented a minor reorganization. You saw Amy here for the CIP night. So she's added to our department. We had an employee retire, and we had some realignment. We look at citywide, not just what we're doing in finance. And you heard Fire here talking about the way that we're changing, going online to do building permits. So that was something we used to bill out every single permit. If somebody got a deck, now they can go on, self-serve, pay it right then. It used to be that came down, someone had to send out a bill, we had to collect that bill. So that has not only helped service our customer, it reduces that, what's essentially redundant workload down in finance. So it's not just impacting the building services department, our division, and our customers. It impacts us positively also.
Dwayne, can you tell us how many years we've gotten the GFOA Certificate of Excellence and put that in any kind of context?
42.
I can't, but
42.
it's a lot. I think Nancy
Online,
might know.
page 217.
I'd say about
second line.
38.
Oh,
on there?
That was
written
for
in
the
there, I missed
Gaffer,
it.
Yeah, okay, here we go.
215, it has the budget numbers.
Okay, 42 on the financial reporting. Well, that's what we're assuming that we'll get it. And where's the CAFR? That's on.
215, page 215.
The budget award?
So, yeah,
Award 32
yeah.
I'd say 30,
or 33,
38.
depending on which year you want to count. A long time, longer than any of our careers except for Steve. So that would have started when he started.
It did.
So put it in context. I mean, is that something that's difficult to receive? Is that something that most cities in Iowa receive?
It's not something that most cities, there's a lot of cities that do it. It's even if you don't receive the certificate, it's a good exercise to go through because it helps. Not only is it peer review, there's professionals at GFOA that lead the peer review that, see all of these. So it's a way to kind of get together and kind of pick. I know Nancy's always looking at other people's budgets and, pick things that we like out of there. Somebody's doing things a little bit better in one little area than we are. So it's a real positive way to, kind of get a new look and some comments every year. But, we appreciate that we've been able to get the award every year too.
Well, I appreciate all the improvements because I'm not a numbers person and I like your book.
Okay,
So-
well, I'll stick to text in the presentation.
It's
for the
very
most part.
helpful.
Next area is purchasing services, and that's on 218. And you don't see them very often at meetings, but they're helping prepare a lot of those bid specs that you see come forward to you, and obviously setting those policies that help us have a nice structured and transparent system for getting bids out and offering availability of city services to the public. So one area that we're trying to improve that is we're in the process of establishing or working on a vendor management system. So that would preload essentially all if a vendor would come forward and say they're interested in bidding on any number of things, we'd put that in place. And then they would automatically get notices of anything that would fit that they had expressed interest in. And then they would also be able to submit those bids electronically. So that is a good way to open up the availability to bid on our services and also to get more bids to help keep those prices down. This group also works on all the large city projects. So if you think about things like community solar, where we had a pretty complex RFP and contracting process, those aren't ones where we just rely on the department to implement our policies and procedures. We'll assign somebody directly to any project like that. This division also includes messenger and printing services, and Susan pointed to some of that. These are some of the brochures we put together, but another thing Susan, I heard her mention was, it's a little bit different tools now. So we're not just doing paper, we're not just doing online. We didn't do this wrap, but we designed the wrap on our electric vehicle to really make that stand out. City of Ames electric vehicle, so it doesn't even have to be moving to be a good example. We replaced the postage machine, but if you look at the budget in this area, not a lot of change in the purchasing division. Information technology.
I just can't believe I'm going to see that number of print shop impressions, 700,000 copies a year. That's just amazing.
Yeah, that's it can vary a little bit, but that's been an area of big change. We used to have the offset press, so right now it's a copy machine. essentially for everything. So it's, but it is a lot, still a lot of paper. 238 is Information Services Division, and we provide IT services to all the departments, division, and services across the city. I'll hit some overall things, but just, you know, kind of some of the things we're focusing on right now are operating system updates. I think people have probably heard in the news that Windows 2007 is not going to be supported here very soon. And we still had some systems that were on that. So we have technicians going around updating any computer that's still on that. You know, occasionally, especially you get out in places that have very specialized software, you know, like the sign shop maybe that's printing out signs with these. They're a little bit nervous that some of that software may not be compatible with Windows 2010. So they've been taking the extra time to clone their drives over, let them test out in Windows 2010, and everything works. Then, you know, we just go forward. If not, we need to work with those companies to make some adjustments. But we are getting everything moved over. The other big project we're working on right now that will impact the mayor and council a little bit is that we're going to be transitioning our email, calendar, and collaboration systems. So the Lotus, or we call it City Connect, it's IBM program. They sold that system to HCL. HCL is a very large software company that's based in India. They're going to continue with the product, but they're going to integrate it in with their other products. They're really not, for the most part, supporting government. There is some federal agencies that use Lotus, and they're going to spin out a little section to continue to have that piece with IBM. Though I think HCL who's been doing development for IBM for years, will continue to support that. But we believed it was really a good time to move off that system, because we were also looking at doing a subscription-based office products. So once we move to that, it really works a lot better to also have Outlook. So that's what we'll be moving to, and that'll be a pretty big change. Right now, we're asking people to do things like clean up their email box, and we'll be moving those now. Okay, just to make the transition a little bit quicker. But if you can't clean them up, we'll get them transferred either way.
So you mean you're going to Microsoft Outlook family?
We're going to Microsoft Outlook and Office 365. So, and those tie together pretty well. I've been using them together for some time now, and so, you know, I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a pretty easy transition. A lot of people are, you know, obviously they're familiar with Office products. A lot of people have used Outlook, and, you know, quite honestly, email to some extent is kind of email. Things will be in a little bit different spot, but they do tie together very well. And then there's also some new collaboration tools that will come with that. So we'll be rolling that out, and that's all part of a bigger trend that I think everybody's seen in the information technology business. And, you know, if you think back, you know, we started out with mainframes and terminals, and then we distributed everything. Everybody had things on a PC, and then, you know, it was only on that PC, and then we pulled it all back together into, you know, a network device or some sort of server. And now, you know, people want that data everywhere. They don't want to be tied, you know, to the building and to your Ethernet. So things are becoming cloud-based, and there's a lot of advantage to that with redundant systems. You know, the ability to have access to the tools and security items that, you know, we as a single, not huge business, you know, can't afford to have somebody that does just security. You know, maybe we could, but we'd have to raise our rates quite a bit. But we can get all that by moving things over the cloud. You know, HR mentioned they were looking at HRIS systems. Preliminary looks at that. All the top systems are subscription cloud-based services now. There's no longer the buy the box and install, in our case, on an AS400. So that's the direction we're moving. That requires some changes in how we do business, and we're in the process of doing some of those things. and they also tie in with cybersecurity. So some of the items that we're working on right now is we're installing a second firewall, and it's going to be at a separate location. So we'll have access to the internet in two places and a fail-safe between the two. So we'll have one in City Hall, one in a different location. We know what it is. And those two will work together. So that'll be a big improvement, both in security and also the reliability of the networks, which you'll need when you're more cloud-based. We had a Department of Homeland Security did a cyber review for us, and it was mainly on our process, procedures, documentations, and we're working on those issues. And then the next step, and we'll probably wait till we get some of these things done that we knew we would like to do, we'll work with them or some other provider on intrusions into our network. We haven't done too much on that lately.
Can we get a fuller report offline on this?
You could, yeah. We have the report from them, and I'll kind of.
And I don't want to take the time up. I mean, it's already late, but
sure,
this is obviously something that is great importance to the council. If we could get something later on, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Click2Gov, our parking ticket system, we've moved that off to the cloud with an external host so that we don't have a vulnerability there. And those are the bigger areas. We'll continue to work on those security procedures and infrastructure. And the budget's up a bit more than usual here at 6.7%. And that's really reflective of that transition to subscription-based services. So we're going to see that we're spending more operating-wise, but over time, we're going to spend a lot less on hardware. Every time we buy an AS400 system, it's like $100,000. And those will get whittled down, but you don't see that savings today in this budget. But over time, it'll show up. Utility customer services. This is a good example of providing services across a wide area. So we provide a number of services, but they're all billed singly through our utility customer service. That's water, sewer, stormwater, and then we also take care of parking tickets, electric. A couple of the big projects here. This wasn't a real big project, but we use Paymentus for our outside payments, and they've added Venmo and another payment one that I wasn't quite as familiar with, but evidently they're fairly popular. So Venmo, obviously, a very widespread system right now. So people can pay their utility bill through Venmo. We completed an upgrade of our route management meter data collection system. This really helps us with our efficiency of getting out. We keep expanding our service area territory, and a couple of utilities talked about AMR. So through use of technology, we've been able to have the same number of meter readers and spread that cost. We really appreciate the support of approving those improvements that help us keep going with the same number of staff. We'll be implementing community solar. So once that's out and all the shares are in place and that's operating, we'll have to do the calculations and credits back to anyone who owns a share of that solar park. And the increase in the budget at about 6.4% was due primarily to increases in personnel costs and data services. Personnel, we've had some turnover in the last few years, and people move through different steps, and that's been kind of the change there that's bumped that up. And then also they'll usually end up selecting a little bit different insurance, but not a lot of changes there otherwise. That's all I had for presentations. I will kind of point out the other divisions here. Parking violation collection. I think the chief spent a lot of time talking about where we are in tickets and why we're there, and obviously that makes changes to the violation collection. I would mention that turnover did impact that the other way. So our portion of that budget's actually down 2.1%. So, we record the personnel costs and some internal service costs for the collection of those tickets. The revenue for the tickets is actually out there in the fund. And I won't go over that all again since I think the chief covered it. But that's all I have for finance, and Steve
That it?
has some wrap-up items.
So I always appreciate you taking the time of these 3 days, because I hope you'll agree. I think you're impressed with the wide array of services we provide to the citizens of Ames. And this is an opportunity for us during these 3 days to highlight those. We never want our citizens or the council to become or forget about the importance of what we do. And hopefully you're also impressed with the quality employees we have here. So it's a good time to review that for all of you. I do want to talk about the wrap-up session because I'm handing out a sheet that will guide us through your decision-making and budget wrap-up. Those of you who've been through it, some of you will be through it the first time. So on Tuesday, we're going to have a normal council meeting following the wrap-up session, but the wrap-up session will start with a presentation of the recommendations for asset, CODA, public art, those type of follow-up items. And then we're going to have an opportunity for citizen input one last time after they've been involved since we started from the budget day we had the town budget meeting. There may be some ideas they have for the CIP or the operating budget. But then it'll move into your final decision-making. And this is a format we're going to use hopefully to follow you through to get you done and complete with those decisions. I don't think we're going to be prepared to set the salaries for the council employees because I don't believe we've got to the point of evaluation yet. So we normally do that, but that'll be delayed. There's money in the budget to handle whatever you so graciously assigned to those two individuals. But we'll move through first the amendments to the CIP. Got a recommended document there. Now, listed as number one is, I don't want you to think that's a directive from staff. It's just you had a plaza sheet. You got to decide whether they're included or not. It's a discussion in this council, so don't see that as a recommendation. It's what you want to deal with it. Other than that, there might be some other amendments you want to the CIP. Okay? So we'll vote on that. That will finalize the CIP for the time. Now remember, it's important. It's a CIP as a plan. It is. And the second through the fourth year may vary and will be switched around. But the projects that are shown in the first year, once you approve that, they are going to be then placed into the operating budget. They have to coincide. So they don't want to be inconsistent. So whatever that's in that first year that you on the approved CIP is going to show up in this budget, operating budget. Then we'll move on to the amendments to the current budget, the fiscal year 1920. We've gone over a lot of that. Remember that list of things I've included. If there's something you want to change, we'll have to discuss that, right? Now, Nancy, you want to explain some of these items from 1 to 4 that you have there?
When we went over the funds last Friday, I noticed that we had budgeted SRF expenses and grant expenses, but we had not budgeted the funding that covered those expenses. So we've gone in and corrected that, and I just wanted to lay out in both years how much revenue we were adding to the budget to cover those expenditures. So they're in both fiscal years and in all three categories. And the total that it adds for each year is, I had a note. Oh, here it is. It's $11,303,650 in fiscal year 1920 and $16,232 in fiscal year 2021. So those revenues will be added, and you have a corrected revenue summary sheet that shows what the new totals will be that you'll be approving.
But it doesn't change the bottom line. It's just we didn't have that.
Right. And then there's corrected fund sheets for the water construction fund, the sewer improvement fund, and the stormwater improvement fund, because there should be funding to cover the expenditures since they're outside funding, so that you can see that those funds break even. And then as I was looking through that, we discovered that we had changed the funding on the water supply expansion CIP project. Originally, we were going to fund it through the water utility fund, and then we changed it to SRF funding. It's correct in the CIP as SRF funding, but it had not been corrected in the budget. So we made that correction as well. So you have a new water utility fund, which you can see its ending balance goes up significantly because that was a over $6 million project.
So
we need motions for all these when we go through them and make that correction?
Yeah, I would say make the correction because it's different than the draft.
So 15 seconds on this.
Okay.
So the reason why it doesn't affect the bottom line is because this is from an outside pot of money with a the state, this revolving fund. Am I saying that correctly?
Mhm. Yeah. So the overall expenditures that we have in the draft didn't change. It shifted it from the water utility fund to the state revolving fund.
Okay.
The source.
The source.
Show them a page. You might have seen a negative balance on one of the pages.
Well, I think if you look at the water fund,
It's okay. I mean, I just need to know conceptually.
Feel comfortable.
right?
Where's a good one to look at?
If you look at the water utility fund
What page is
page,
it?
276, it starts. Across the next page.
so the ending balance. Between the two pages should have, it should now be up by the amount of that project, which was 6,078,000.
So we won't be dipping $8 million in
Right.
the fund, you see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It's just adding revenue where we didn't show it in places. Different source of revenue. So it doesn't come out of the fund. Now, item 4 on there is important. Item 4 you see on that, it's only important if you introduce the CIP and the plaza, because for us to move ahead in the first year to do design, we're going to have to drop, remember, a design of a parking lot in North River Valley, which has taken longer than we thought because we're waiting for the water line to go right through there. We're not going to build that parking lot and tear it up. Remember, the cost of that water line is very expensive to get up there well, and we've been delaying that, try to redesign it. So that's how we would move ahead with the design in the first year if you wanted to do it. So we'd have to take, we'd reduce $200,000 from the fund, from the
Steve,
local option fund. to pay for it.
Excuse me, back to this water utility enterprise fund. I follow the CIP. Where do you show the money coming in from the SRF?
Actually, the revenue coming in is in the water construction fund, which is on the next page. I gave you the water utility fund because we switched the funding for that project, which made the ending balance increase from what we talked about last Friday.
So would that be on page 279 SRF?
Yeah, so,
That's actually 278, the water construction. The next one's the sinking fund is where we pay those back.
yes, if you look at,
Okay, so under this first line, state revolving loan fund,
right,
that will go up then, is that correct?
if you're looking in the draft copy,
Yep,
there was no funding showing in fiscal year 2021.
okay.
And there should have been enough to cover that $2.5 million expenditure.
Oh, I
See it
see,
down
I
below.
see.
Yeah.
So
you have,
2.572
Yep.
million, you're gonna have
Yeah.
to show a recommended from the SRF.
yep,
2.572
there
million.
should be enough revenue coming in since we're funding it completely with SRF funding to cover that, and the fund should break even, so.
So on your corrected two-page, the unreserved fund balance goes from 3 million to 9 million. But we're only showing 2.5 million of additional SRF. How does that happen?
Okay, well, you're looking at the water utility, the operating budget?
Yeah, the water utility, page 2, the one that you just handed out. In the draft, it shows unreserved fund balance of $3,046,900.
Right, and now it goes to 9 million.
It goes up to 9 million.
Right, because we took out the project for the North River Valley well field. We had it correct in the CIP, but on the draft, it was included in the CIP, and it shouldn't have been because it's really should be funded on the next page in the water construction fund. So you need to take what we had for the 3 million in the draft and add the 6 million for that project, and that's why the new balance in the water utility fund is $9 million.
Maybe we need to show a better job on Tuesday how we'll try to make it clear.
It's not questioning
No, I understand.
the
You gotta be
accuracy.
able to
It's just-
see it.
I'm just trying to follow the,
You got to be able to see it.
Just
We'll have
follow
to
dots.
find a better way to do this, to show it to you.
Yeah.
Right.
thank you.
We're not asking you to do it tonight. We're just telling you that's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's helpful to have this, the
I
project.
don't think it's as clear as we needed to show.
And the SRF fund is a little bit metaphysical anyway. or just the way in which the money comes in and out of that.
No. Okay, so anyway, we'll deal with the amendments next, budget amendments, operating budget amendments. Then we'll move on to the proposed budget itself, right? 2021. You'll have to make your decision versus, you'll look at the recommendation for CODA, asset, public art, the outside funding requests. AEDC has another request above and beyond their normal $150,000. You've maybe received some outside funding requests from other agencies. I mean, you're just gonna have to decide what you want to do in terms of 2021. Again, it's hard if you just tell me and that night you want to raise another 50,000 on the general fund or something. We need to know that. We'd like to know that in advance if you're contemplating something, so we can have that calculated so the rest of the council will know this is the impact on taxes.
So you'd like us, council, to let you know like tomorrow or
Yeah, just let me
Monday?
know. I don't even know if the rest of the council will go along with it. We can prepare to
Right.
answer the question, how much it will cost. We gave you that auditorium, and that, if you're gonna do anything with the auditorium, that's gonna require an increase in taxes. But we give you those options there too, I think.
That's something you already feel prepared on, or would you like a separate communication if we wanted to move on to one of those auditorium mock?
I think you ought to tell me if you're thinking about one of those options.
Okay.
Just so we're prepared.
Yeah, I understand.
Is there a running list? I don't remember a lot of other additions as we've gone through these hearings.
Well, one was the request from Main Street in terms of increasing the amount that's used for the facade grant from,
Yeah.
it went up from, I think, from 15 to 25,000. I think they went up $25,000 or something like that. They were asking for some more money to go
Did
towards
we give them a copy of that again, or?
to that. And then I think the other thing was she talked about, helping offset some of the costs for the auditorium. Those are two that come
We
to
gave it
mind
on Friday.
immediately.
Oh, it's in the packet?
Last Friday.
Look at your packet. Is there,
Last Friday. Friday, the special, with the special
The
report.
back
That's what I
of
meant.
This packet, if you.
does it have that letter in there where they ask for the extra
Yeah.
money?
Mhm.
One facade grant, is that the one?
Yep, that's it. It was way at the back, the
They asked
last
for a lot in there.
couple pages. Yeah, there's several asks.
But auditorium didn't make it in that in time, so that was separate.
I sent that out to you. I
Yeah.
forgot when. Monday.
It's page 52. Increase overall annual allocation to $85,000 for downtown.
If you're thinking about something, I need to know that, we're getting to the point where we're stressing the, local option tax fund. If you see that we're dipping into that fund about $272,000 for next year alone, where we're at today. In other words, revenue from that year will not equal expenditures. We have to dip into the fund. So if you keep adding to it, it's going to be, it'll be a bit of a stretch. But we'll see how much you want to add. If it's a little bit, it's not a problem. If it's another $100,000 for the next 5 years, that'll dip substantially in there. And maybe we need to switch money to another place. I don't know. I just need to know what you're thinking, so I can not have to think about that night.
So if I'm interested in adding a grant program, is this when we would bring that up, or is that? I mean, I've already talked to Steve. I haven't told council about this, so maybe, do I tell them this now? Talk to some people.
Good.
I don't know what's,
I don't know if it would take time for everybody to put out stuff now. It's up to you, not me. I mean, everybody might
So
want to.
yeah.
if we're going to have any more meeting, we should have just a brief break. We've been at this since
Yeah, I gotta
5:15.
get going soon myself. So.
I just want to know when to bring it up. That's my only question,
Tuesday
because
night.
I've talked to
I
Steve
mean,
about
I
it.
think the key is it's just as long as you have adequate time, and if you think that Tuesday night's adequate, we'll just go ahead and delay that till Tuesday night, and that's when you'll bring it up then.
Yep, and I can send out an email
I-
in the meantime.
Yeah, you can send out an email explaining
The
it
other, the other thing is that we've
I
already,
can do
without
that.
any response back to what
Yep.
we're thinking, but
we've already lost Amber because she had to go to
That's true.
an event. Brown was going to take off. I want to be sensitive to people's schedules.
I think if you're thinking something, get a hold of me so we can help be prepared. And I think it's good to communicate with the council, not to get their feedback on it, just to say you're going to bring up something and here's what it's going to be, so you're prepared. So you're not surprised that night too.
Yeah.
You can contemplate that.
Okay.
Does that all make sense then, how we'll follow through on it? All right, anybody else need any information before Tuesday besides what you're maybe calling me on?
I'd like to follow up on just one thing. I think it's sort of become clear in this discussion, but it's potentially confusing. That's about the relationship between the CIP and the current year budget and the next year budget. And so isn't it correct that what's listed as the first year of the CIP is actually in the coming year's budget?
That's
and they're
right.
meant to be synchronized.
They are good bets, as I mentioned before. Yes, we want them to be synchronized.
Right. So, but it's years 2 through 4 or 2 through 5 in the CIP that we can change with sort of less consequence.
Well, not for me, because
I understand as a planning matter, it's very important, but it's not.
it's balanced with our projection from the revenue.
Yeah.
And I don't like to show $10 million or something in the second year if I don't think there'll be road use tax to pay for it. So there is an art to this. It is not, if you flip it around, I might have to advise you that money's not there.
Yeah, I understand that aspect of it. It's just more that there's a direct sort of entanglement between the first year of the CIP and the current year budget in terms of legal requirements for that and that sort of thing.
Yes, but again,
okay.
we have a realistic document. I would hope that you would have told me at the beginning, so I would have slid other projects. Because I do try to make it a realistic document. A lot of cities don't, but if it's in there the second, third, or fourth year, it's based on our long-range financial projections, which you asked me to do. So it should be tied to reality, I believe. And that doesn't mean next year when we develop it, you want to change it, then tell me up front, and then we'll move projects around. Or if you want to move something around the second year, tell me now, maybe over the weekend. So I'll tell you, well, I think you need to slide one of these other projects back. Or otherwise, there's not going to be any fiscal reality to it. And there's no reason to do long-range financial planning for you. I'm trying to make a realistic document based on the best estimates we have.
Yes, I understand.
make sense to you?
I agree with that process. I just want to understand better the relationship between the two documents. That's all. Thanks.
Well, I think it's fair to say that second and third, you're not bound by it. Come next year, that could change.
Yeah.
But I'll know that and I'll be able to
And
work
you'll have
on
a
it.
reason for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve tonight? Anything he's looking for direction? Okay, council comments. Lori, anything tonight?
Well, I want to thank Barb for pointing out another fun fact for us that we are number 3 behind New York, Newark, and San Francisco, Oakland in our ridership per capita on our public transportation system. So I'm sensing a trend here that we could capitalize on in the future if we want to have fun facts to celebrate. That's it.
We'll be thanking you guys as we go along here, but particularly in a situation where our revenues are tight, we appreciate the thoughtfulness. We really have to be very diligent. So we don't have a lot of margin this year, and so appreciate your diligence. Nothing else.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight.
I would just echo what Tim said. I think that we don't understand how much work goes into this, and thank you so much for your efforts. And I would, as Lori pointed out, there's a lot of stuff here. Boy, it sure is nice to be able to follow through it. So Nancy, thank you for your efforts.
Sure.
And staff, and I know Steve, you led the charge and told department heads you only had so much money to work with. So anyway. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.